What's cracking, everybody? This is Fade to Black. Bespoke radio for the masses. Today is Monday, October 26th. 299 days in the new year, just 69 days left. For KJCR, the Game Changer Network, and KGRA, The Planet, I am your host, Jimmy Church. I'd like to welcome everybody listening all around the world, all across the United States. Hither and thither, to and fro, back and forth, up and down, east and west, north and south, far and near. This is Fade to Black. And tonight, I've been waiting for this one. Tonight we have musician, guitar player, Michael Lee Hill. This is Halloween week, by the way. Tomorrow night we're going to have Paul Eno right here. We're going to talk about the Bell Witch Curse and other haunted places around the United States. Wednesday is the Haunted Housewives. That's right. Right here on Fade to Black. Talk about all of their investigations and what they do. Thursday night, yes, it is a tradition. Thursday night is a special Halloween show with Sha, the Loon Witch, doing predictions all night long. The call-in number is 323-825-5045. You can also Skype in Fade to Black and the number 14. I'd like to welcome all the new listeners to the show tonight that are here for the first time. This is a long-form conversation show. Nothing premeditated. There's no list of questions. I know what I'm talking about. I know my guests. And that's what we do here. So just get comfortable. Turn down the lights. I'm in a bunker in a secret location somewhere in the city of Burbank, California. Deep underground, no windows, lights are dim. And it's Halloween week. So you need to picture that in your own mind's eye as you listen to my voice. That is what is going on. I need you to do the same. Turn down the lights, get a stiff cup of Joe or whatever. Get your heaters ready or whatever. And do it. Pull up your blankie and get comfortable. Tonight's going to be one of those nights. Michael Lee Hill is somebody that I have followed for quite a while. I've read almost all of his stuff, and he's very prolific when it comes to commenting and writing on things. And not only that, I've listened to a bunch of his music, too, as well. And he's a very talented musician and guitar player. And we'll talk about that tonight, too, as well. But it's his connection to ufology, E.T., and the Anunnaki. That is a pretty amazing story. And his videos that he has shot, he has sent to me, and I've looked at a bunch of them over the last couple of years of the objects over Lake Erie. So we'll be talking about all of that. If you haven't seen any of his videos, we'll get some of the links up. But I'll count on Mark and Dennis and the crew. You know, Walter will probably chime in to post links up to Michael's videos, too, as well on Twitter, if you would like to go and check those out. His website is michaelleehill.net. michaelleehill.net. You can go and check out everything over there. All right. With that, let's get the show cracking. I am ready. You know, I wanted to say very special thanks to Chase Kletsky last night on Coast to Coast and Ron Felber on Coast to Coast, and also John Richards of SETI. We had him on Coast to Coast, too, as well last night. And it was a fun show. It was a great show. And the crew over there, Jeff and Ben, you guys are too much, and you make life very easy when I walk into a studio. Coast to Coast is such a first-class operation. Everybody over there. And it is just awesome for me to be able to walk in on a Sunday night and just have things, laid out like that. It just makes life wonderful. It was a fun show. It was a cool show. And I hope everybody listened. It was great. I had a really good time. So thanks to everybody over there, especially Ben and Jeff. You guys are real professionals. And there you go. The bumper music last night was pretty cool. I came in last night and I thought, you know what I want to do? This is what I want to do. Now, I just wonder if I'm going to get struck down. So I get to the studio and I roll in, and I've got a thermos that I fill with coffee. So I've got my mug and I've got my coffee, because there at the building, it's a huge complex. You have to understand it's a big, tall, 20-story building, and we occupy one of the floors there. But at 10 o'clock at night, and especially on a Sunday, it's empty. The building's empty. It's just me and the crew. And there is no cafeteria. There's no lounge. There is no coffee. There's nothing like you. Whatever you need to bring into the studio, whatever those needs are, because during a commercial break, you're not going down to your car. There's not that kind of time. You're not going across the street to Starbucks. So I have to come in complete. And last night, I screwed up my coffee that I brewed. So I had this watered down coffee ground filled nastiness, and I couldn't drink it. And so I had to stop, and I picked up a bunch of canned Starbucks. Anyway, that's beside the point. So I roll into the studio, but I was thinking when I was going through all of this about the bumper music. And I had this idea, and I was just hoping I wasn't going to get struck down. And the idea was to play, to see if they would let me do the Donnie Darko soundtrack, right? I was thinking, man, that would be just so cool. So I go in and I said, hey, Jeff, Ben, what do you guys think? Have you set up bumper music? Nope. Okay. All right. What do you think about doing the Donnie Darko soundtrack? Oh, man, that would be awesome. Immediately, Jeff's on point. Yeah, I got everything right here. And I was like, really? We can do it? Yeah, let's do it. So we started lining that up. And then we went down this road of 80s cool British bands. And we started throwing names out there left and right. And I couldn't believe it, man. The guys were just so cool. The next thing you know, we had a complete list of ultra cool. And then and we kept going. We had more music than we needed. So now we had to go back and bump some bumper and replace it. But it was so cool. And that's what I'm saying. It just makes life wonderful. And I thought that the bumper music was really cool last night. So, and if you dug it, I didn't know. I didn't know if I was going out on. Somebody just tweeted. That's Jeff. He's the board op. He's the one that got all of that together. Oh, that's mine. I can't retweet my tweet, right? I don't think there's rules about this, right? And, just let me, I don't know if it did or not. And anyway, let me not get too far sideways. But it just makes it easy when you can just go in, say something like that, and just have the team go, absolutely, great idea. Amazing. Yeah, it's totally cool. Let's just tweet out the picture of Ben, the producer. And as you can see, that did not happen because Ben is about 6'6". I'm 6 foot. So look how tall Ben is. Ben is he's a tall, strapping young man. He's a tall drink of water. Anyway, it's a great picture. Okay. All right. Let's see. Where are we at? Skyfire Summit is just 2 short weeks away. It's not even that. Today's the 26th. It's November 5th through the 8th. Travis Walton out in Heber, Arizona. Travis Walton, David Hatcher Childress. Just go to skyfiresummit.com and get your tickets. Now, Ben Hansen, James Fox, Tracy Torme, Dr. Leo Sprinkle, Jennifer Stein, Alejandro. Everybody's going to be there. That's a great lineup. Get your tickets now. Heber, Arizona. Travis Walton. That's probably very close to getting sold out. Alien Snowfest, we have 4 days left on the $179 early bird special. So go and get those. By the next time you talk to me, or the next week that rolls around, I should say, that's going to be gone. So get on it now. All right, where am I at? Studio Dome has still got their special going on the SBB And, yeah, I loved it last night. All of you Twitter tweeters over at Coast to Coast, somebody had posted, hey, man, I got my SBB for Coast to Coast tonight. I was like, right on. Just go to the Studio No banner over at JimmyChurchRadio.com. Let's get this show cracking. Cary Elwes today is 53, and he will always, always make the list because he was Wesley in The Princess Bride. He was pretty good, too, in Robin Hood Men in Tights or whatever that was called. That was pretty good, too. He was good. But he was Wesley in The Princess Bride, Cary Elwes. John Heder today is 38, and he played Napoleon Dynamite in Napoleon Dynamite. Funny dude. He was in that ice skating movie, too, whatever that was called. Seth MacFarlane today is 42. And I must confess, I arrived late on the Family Guy bandwagon. But Rita and I have been watching Family Guy lately and wondering why and how we missed the genius of that show. Also today, Bootsy Collins is 64. Unbelievable. 64. What was that song? Flashlight, Parliament, Funkadelic. Man, that's 40 years ago. And they had the whole UFO that landed on the stage with the lights and it opened up. Way ahead of its time. Bootsy Collins, happy birthday. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Michael Lee Hill is right here. I'll be back with all of the news that you know nothing about right after this. I'll be right back.
You're listening to Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
Fade to Black will now pause for alien identification.
The station that talks the net. KGRA Radio.
What's up, revolutionaries? It's me, Jimmy Church. Do you have an IRS or state tax issue? Well, I did, and I called national tax experts. My problems were fixed, done, fini, and man, I gotta tell you, it was a relief. National tax experts are a recognized tax office that services clients in all 50 states. It doesn't matter where you live. Give them a call. I'm telling you, they take the time to understand each and every client's individual financial status as well as their financial goals. And that's exactly what you need, my brother, when you're taking on the evil three-letter. So, seriously, give them a call today at 1-877-909-5444. Again, 1-877-909-5444. Or go check out their website, www.nattaxexperts.com. That's NATTAXEXPERTS.com. Tell them Jimmy sent you.
9 out of 10 geneticists agree.
Fade to Black is not your father's radio show on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, The Planet.
Hi, this is Chase Kletsky with Fate Magazine Radio, and you're listening to Jimmy Church and Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network and the KGRA digital broadcast station, where the Fade or Nots rock.
Hi, this is Rob Reiner from Anvil, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
What's up? I'm Chris. What up? This is Kyle Massey, and you're listening to Jimmy Church Radio.
Welcome back. It is Halloween week. Halloween's turned into like this. It's like 2 weeks long now. I don't know what happened about 10 years ago, but now, you know, the Halloween parties kick off and they go on for 2 straight weeks. Might as well just change it. Just make it a 2-week holiday. I'm down for that. And we're doing it all week long this week. Tonight, we have musician, guitar player Michael Lee Hill. Tomorrow night, Paul Eno and the Bell Witch Curse. And if you're not familiar with the Bell Witch and the curse and when and how and where that happened, that was the first poltergeist haunted house situation like ever, certainly in the United States. And it happened in the early part of the 1800s. And I believe one of the presidents, who was ever president at that time, he went to the house to check it out. And when he left the next morning, he said, I forget who it was, but my memory says he left the house and said, dude, I ain't ever coming back. I'm not man enough to mess with what is going on in this house. And that is no joke. We're going to be doing that tomorrow night. Wednesday, the Haunted Housewives are here, and Teresa and Kathy, and we're going to be talking about the most haunted places and the most haunted places that they have been. That's what they do. That is Wednesday night. Thursday night, right here, Shah, the Loon Witch. Last year, if you remember, Shah came on the show, and we did about, let's see here, if we do one every 3 minutes, that's 20. We probably did 50 or 60 readings that night. She is amazing. And a lot of it caught us completely by, it was just amazing. She is the best. That is Thursday night, a tradition here on Fade to Black. Shah will be with us for Halloween. Cannot wait. With that, let's get this show cracking. We got a great week. I am so fired up. That's why I like Mondays. Today, on this day in history, in 1881, it happened. I talk about it all the time on this show. And you know why. It was the Earps shooting it out at the OK Corral in Tombstone, Arizona, on this day in 1881. 3 guys died. 3 guys were left fairly wounded, and it happened on this day, 1881, the shootout at the OK Corral. Fader fact. Listen to this. You need to remember this for tomorrow morning. Okay, so just listen to this. If you put Mount Everest on the seafloor, okay, you put Mount Everest on the seafloor next to Hawaii's Mauna Kea, right? Mount Everest would be less than 10,000 feet above sea level. Think about that. That's insane. And that is a Fader fact. All of the news that you know nothing about, crazy stuff. I didn't include in the news today because I'm sure everybody had read about it, but there was an earthquake yesterday in Afghanistan and Pakistan, 7.5. Deep down. I think it was almost 200 miles, I think, under the Earth's surface, deep down. It would have been much worse. But I just don't like news of earthquakes. I just don't. And now that I've got my... Oh, did you guys see? Thank you, Rick. I just posted up before the show. For my birthday, Rick Sinnott sent me a Ouija board coffee mug. And, man, this thing is smoking. I just hope... First off, I don't know what this thing is made out of. It's glass, but it weighs about 10 pounds. And it's got to have, like, I don't know, like... I don't know how to explain it, man. It's like bulletproof glass, but it is really cool. Thank you for that, Rick. And then inside of the said coffee mug was an alien gray head hacky sack. And that is really cool. That will sit on the desk forever. I'll take a picture of that on the next break. All right, all the news that you know nothing about. German Chancellor Angela Merkel may not be the only high-ranking leader from that country to be spied on by the NSA. According to a report published over the weekend, German authorities are investigating whether the head of the German Federal Chancellery had his laptop infected with Region. You know, Region. That sophisticated malware program that has been linked to the NSA. And, of course, the British counterpart, the Government Communications Headquarters. According to research published last year by security firm Kaspersky, Region was used to infect more than 100 targets and has been active since 2008. Kaspersky Lab researchers went on to say that the targets included Belgacom, the partly state-owned Belgian telecom company, Jean-Jacques Cater, a prominent Belgian cryptographer. Documents leaked by former NSA subcontractor Ed Snowden have further linked Region to the NSA, specifically to an NSA attack tool dubbed QWERTY. According to the German magazine Der Spiegel, QWERTY is a key logging plugin that's part of a much larger framework described in a Snowden leaked document as Warrior Pride. The takeaway here is that Region and Warrior Pride are the same thing. Somebody has got some splaining to do. 2 more documents from CIA Director John Brennan's private email have been released by WikiLeaks over the weekend. While Brennan worked for the CIA between 1980 and 2005, all of the documents in the cache that have been released date to 2008, when he was running a private intelligence company, write this down, called The Analysis Corp, or TAC, T-A-C, The Analysis Corp. Sounds spooky. In 2008, Brennan donated to Barack Obama's campaign, which hired TAC, The Analysis Corp, as a security advisor. One of the documents in Monday's release is an October 2008 dossier on Supervisory Special Agent Donovan J. Leighton, listed as a Federal Bureau of Investigation's program manager for the Arabian Peninsula. Leighton later used his FBI experience for a gig with Lockheed Martin. There is nothing to explain why his dossier and biography ended up in Brennan's personal email, though. Another document is a list of 22 people that belong to what WikiLeaks referred to as a currently unidentified group. Closer look at the names suggests that the list might have been tracking prospects for the presidential transition team, which was being assembled by Brennan, who is a security advisor, right, as part of TAC's contract with the Obama campaign. That list includes contact phone numbers, email addresses, places of employment, security clearance information, and sensitive information like social security numbers and birth dates. Man, WikiLeaks ain't right. That just ain't right. The world's oldest known alphabet primer, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, that was found in a list of ancient Egyptian words inscribed on a shard of pottery from the 15th century BC. Yes, it's called Astrakhan. The flake of limestone was unearthed near Luxor over 20 years ago. British Egyptologist Nigel Strudwick found it as he excavated the Theban tomb 99, which was the burial of Senefri. That guy, an 18th dynasty official who lived under the reign of Thutmose III. It contains an incomplete list of words written in a cursive script used in ancient Egypt for some 3,000 years. But it is, indeed, apparently, the first reference of the ABCs. The U.S. Navy plans to send a destroyer, here we go, within 12 miles of Chinese man-made islands in the South China Sea within the next 24 hours. It may happen during this show tonight. This was first reported by Reuters earlier today. The ship could make the pass as soon as this evening, barring any unforeseen circumstances. A U.S. military source has said there will be air cover as well as reconnaissance craft in the air flying international airspace. Now, the aircraft will watch the ship. Now, we're talking about, an armed escort. And it's going to be there to protect the ship, reconnaissance to record and deal with any problems. The Chinese have not been informed, but they listen to this show, so they know now. The source said, adding that no trouble is expected. What are you doing poking a stick in the eye of a bear? It's just like not a good idea. This news was released today, made headlines all around the world. The WHO, the World Health Organization, said today that eating processed meat such as sausages, ham, and bacon cause cancer, while unprocessed red meat may also be carcinogenic. Now, this is the famous case where you just take the story and flip it over 180 degrees, right? Check this out. The WHO's Cancer Research Unit now classifies processed meat as carcinogenic to humans based on evidence from hundreds of studies and linked it specifically to colon cancer. The report outlined that simply eating 50 grams of processed meat each day, the equivalent of 2 slices of ham, can increase the risk of cancer by 18%. And then they go on to say, the risks are relatively small to begin with. Yeah. The organization defines processed meat as any type of meat which is salted, cured, or smoked to enhance its flavor or to preserve it. Processed meat generally contains pork or beef, but may also contain poultry. The point is, the headline says, processed meat, bacon causes cancer. That's the headline. And you're thinking, what? And you read it, then you read it, and it's And not only that, they didn't do any actual research. All they did was compile a bunch of stuff off the internet. That's what they did. I'm not making this up. That's all that they did. But they go and they do a press release like this. Now, you know the meat industry will respond in kind tomorrow. The WHO causes cancer. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. When I come back after this short break, we will be joined by Michael Lee Hill, guitar player, musician, Anunnaki. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. This is Fade to Black. Follow us on Twitter right now at JChurchRadio. Email is jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. Thank you, Rick, for the mug. For the Ouija mug. What is this going to do to my house tonight? I just got to know. I'll be back right after this.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
The station that talks the net. KGRA Radio.
Hello, I'm Katie, and you're listening to my main man, Jimmy Church, on jimmychurchradio.com.
Hi, this is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black. Today, everybody, the Fadernauts and planet Earth is vaping, and I'm very proud to announce our very own e-juice. When we were approached by City of Angels Vapor about Fade to Black e-juice, I wanted to make sure that it was the very best and that the flavors were something that I could create myself, and we did just that. Introducing Fade to Black Fader Loops. This will take you right back to Saturday morning cartoons and your favorite bowl of fruity, loopy cereal. Just click on the banner or go to www.coavapor.com. Enter the promo code JimmyLive. That's Jimmy, L-I-V-E, for the Fadernaut special. The website, coavapor.com. Go Beckley Teppy.
Hi, this is Ray Hobbs here, repping the planet, and you're listening to my good friend, Jimmy Church, Fade to Black, on the Game Changer Network and the KGRA digital broadcast station.
Imagine no longer being tied down to your computer, but having the freedom to take live talk radio with you anywhere you go. TalkStream Live introduces our first ever iPhone application. The talk shows you follow now follow you. And your iPhone is now the fastest and easiest way to stay connected to the best talk radio on the internet. Let TalkStream Live transform the way you listen to radio. Listen to live talk shows 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Mobile talk radio from TalkStream Live. Now available in the iTunes App Store.
This is Toby Kebbell. You're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com. Don't hurt me, Jimmy. I'm only little.
Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier.
And this is Ari Gold.
We're the Honey Brothers.
We are of
the Honey Brothers. Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier.
And I'm Ari Gold.
We're the Honey Brothers.
And you're listening to Jimmy Church.
The Revolution.
All right, you Fadernauts. Studio Dome has done it once again. A new Studio Dome Fadernaut special. Introducing the Studio Dome Boom Box Bluetooth speaker. It's got a rear-firing bass film subwoofer and dual 52mm main speakers. You'll never listen to your tablet or cell phone speakers again. Just click on the Studio Dome banner, use the promo code Jimmy, and you'll get the SBB for $49 and free shipping. And get a Buddy 4-port USB charger for free. That's a $19.99 value right there. And they'll throw in a Buddy in the box. It's the best deal on the net anywhere. Just go to jimmychurchradio.com, click on the Studio Dome banner, enter the promo code Jimmy. Go Beckley Teppy.
This is Micah Hanks of the Gralien Report, and you're listening to Jimmy Church on Fade to Black, across the globe on the Game Changer Radio Network and the one and only KGRA Radio, The Planet.
Welcome back to Fade to Black. Tonight we have musician, guitar player, Anunnaki, Michael Lee Hill. He's right here. Tomorrow night, Paul Eno and the Bell Witch Curse. Wednesday night, the Haunted Housewives are right here. The both of them, Teresa and Kathy, will be discussing the most haunted places that they have been to. And Thursday night, our special Halloween show with Shah, the Loon Witch. The call-in number tonight is 323-825-5045. You can also Skype in Fade to Black 14. Michael Lee Hill is somebody that I have followed for quite a long time. And I have read so much stuff and watched his videos. I am completely intrigued and impressed. And so tonight, it's been a long time putting together. We finally got him on the show. He will be with us in just a short bit. Michael Lee Hill is an award-winning musician, filmographer, and UFO experiencer in his home state of Ohio. Michael has been cataloging video after video of UFOs over Lake Erie. I have seen them myself. We have posted a few in Twitter tonight. Michael's Lake Erie UFO footage has been featured on the Discovery Channel, Fox News, MSNBC, CBS News, Coast to Coast AM, Rents, and HBCCUFO.org. And in the feature film, UFOs Unplugged with Dan Aykroyd, that is the film by David Sarita. And Michael's most recently been featured on History Channel's UFO Hunters. His website is michaelleehill.net. I would like to welcome to Fade to Black for the first time. It's about time, Michael Lee Hill. Michael, how are you tonight, brother?
I am doing fantastic. How you doing, Jimmy?
You know, I'm fantastic. Thank you for that. Michael, you know, you've got a lot of fans out there, and when the word started to get out that you were going to be on the show, it was amazing to me, and I know you got the same response. It's about time, right? But
indeed, man, it's all good.
Well, what they don't know is you and I have been talking for a while, trying to get this put together, and the stars and the moon align. And then when I just want to let your fans know that this wasn't some last minute thing. We were reaching out to you, but you were on vacation.
Yeah, I went totally off the grid. I was on top of a mountain in Virginia for a while, and there was no cell phone reception. There was nothing, but it was really good to recharge the batteries, and it was good timing because right when I got home, I got your message, and here we are.
Yeah, it was funny because you and I are we're easy to get a hold of. We've always been able to communicate with each other, and so I reach out to you, a week, 10 days ago, whatever, and I was like, "What's up with Michael? Man, I hope everything is okay." And so it was kind of funny because my emails and texts to you were getting more and more frantic. Dude. Dude.
Yeah, it was kind of funny. I was getting contacted by friends asking me if I've been abducted. And actually, when I was down off the mountain and in a valley where there was reception, my parents were down there as well, and some of my friends were contacting me through my mom just to see if I was okay.
Well,
I'm like, geez, I guess it's nice to be loved, you know?
Well, it was funny. When you responded back, I was on vacation. I was like, oh, okay. Whew. All right. So, Michael, welcome to the program, and I will do the disclaimer that I do with all first-time guests. This will be the only time that you hear this, but you've heard it before. Now it's your turn, which is... It's just you and I sitting on my couch in my living room having a conversation. We're going to start as friends. Wherever the conversation goes, it goes, and we're going to end as friends. Are you ready?
I like it, and I'm ready.
Let's do this. Now, what I want to talk about first, actually, I want to get kind of the music thing out of the way because that is a connection that you and I have directly. Did you listen to the bumper music?
Yeah, it was slamming, man. I was going to ask you.
You like that?
Yeah, some serious good guitar playing going on there.
You know who it is?
No, I don't.
It's me.
Really? Well,
No,
holy shit. Excuse my language.
No, it's not me.
That's awesome, man. You're a fantastic player.
No, that's Doug Aldrich.
I was going to say, wow, it's all good regardless. But, yeah, Doug was in Whitesnake, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was in Whitesnake. He was in Dio. He was in Bad Moon Rising, Burning Rain. My favorite band that he was in, the Dio stuff was great. I participated in that somewhat. And the Whitesnake stuff and the Burning Rain, I helped produce that stuff too. But going back, his best stuff to me was back in the 80s that he was in a hair band called Lion. And that first album, that first Lion record, oh, man. And it's true big hair and spandex, it's all of that, man, Aquanet, Sunset Strip. But the album itself stands on its own. It's very timeless, so... he's doing good. He's on tour right now with Glenn Hughes. He's playing in Glenn Hughes' band.
Oh, right on.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, very cool. Good for Doug. So anyway, you're a player, and I dig your style. It's kind of all over the place in that you've got your jazz, you've got your rock, you've got your guitar histrionics in there, and you've got a lot of different flavors. And influences. What would you call your style of playing?
Oh, wow. Maybe space hippie. I don't know. Music has been such an important part of my life. And, I just was really inspired by some of the classic rock artists, like Billy Gibbons.
Sure.
Into Eddie Van Halen. When I heard Eddie, I was just sold, and some of my people that were true inspirations to me, I've had the honor of actually gotten to meet and play with some of them. Later on in life, what had happened was I worked for this company called Ardak Money Controls and got myself into management. And because of a tragedy in my life, I just hit a wall mentally, and I asked for some answers. I said to the universe, if there's anyone out there or in here, you need to speak up. Because what had happened was my aunt was murdered while living with my parents. She was going through a divorce. And instead of just getting answers, what I got was a intense yearning for knowledge and to read. And I started being guided to beds of spiritual information. And the one that changed my life was called the Seth Material, which was by Jane Roberts.
Yes.
And I just soaked that stuff up, and I started to understand some of the concepts of how our own mental energy creates our physical experience. And I looked forward in my life and I thought, if I'm 60 years old and I'm a manager here making really good money in that time, it was just the darkest feeling in my soul. I'm like, I would rather play music in a old bar and like barely keep a roof over my head than follow that other path. So I put myself on a layoff list because, it was a weird situation. I got them a postal contract service, which was, you can imagine every post office in the United States had one of this company's dollar bill changers in it. And at that point, I loved my job, but bigger companies seen the profit margin. They came in, laid everybody off. And I was thinking, what the hell kind of moral is that these people work their ass off, to make this project work, and everyone got laid off. So, with this happening, plus my coming across this spiritual bed of information, which is pretty much love or fear, right? Whatever you focus your attention on is what you're going to experience. So I put myself on the layoff list, and about 5 months it went by and no magical doors had opened, because this intelligence that started to communicate with me kind of told me if I just had the courage to step out live without a net, so to speak, that the universe would come back and meet me 50-50, and I'd meet who I needed to meet, and it would be effortless. Well, 5 months had went by, none of this had happened, and that internal dialogue of doubt started, and at this time period I had one of the most lucid dreams of my life. It was more like a vision, and in it I was led down a corridor by a guide. And when I got into the club, it was Steve Vai doing a sound check. And I remember, I'm a huge Steve Vai fan. Even, I don't know, remember those Guitar Player magazines and you could rip out a plastic record out of them and put them on?
Flexible when he had...
Steve's was one of the first ones of those. So I've been a fan of his for a long time. And in this vision, he was doing a song sound check. There was no one else in there but the band and him, and he was in the floor area, and he was saying, I need a little bit more treble on the guitar or whatever. And he started doing this song called There's a Train That's Leaving, and he like levitated right over to where I was, and the music stopped and was built into this big crescendo. And right when the music stopped, he said, "Welcome aboard." But when he said welcome aboard, it was almost like in this divine God voice, and it woke me up out of the dream. And I was just like, what the heck? And kind of just filed it into my what the heck drawer in my mind, we'll call it. And that keeps getting filled up, by the way. And just thought, well, that was a strange dream. Didn't think much more of it. Well, the next day I had this nagging feeling that there was a synchronicity waiting for me at his website. So I go and visit Vi.com, and the first thing I seen, it said, enter the Steve Vai Ibanez Guitar Challenge. And the fur went up on the back of my neck. I knew I was going to win that contest before I even recorded a single note on my guitar. Because to me, it wasn't about my guitar. I just met him in a vision, and he said, welcome aboard. And sure enough, I did end up winning the contest, and it was a nationwide contest. And so they flew me out to a G3 show to meet him, and ended up I met Joe Satriani as well, and which is cool. We can get into why that's prominent in this. But when I met Steve, I brought him one of those Seth books, and I handed it to him, and I said, after reading some of your lyrics, I thought that you would appreciate this book. And he looked at it and he smiled and he goes, I've read every Seth book. He said, but don't get wrapped up into the messenger. There's still something higher. And, me and Steve have been friends ever since, and he actually gave me permission to use what the contest was he took one of his songs and stripped everything off of it down the drums and bass. Then you had to re-record the guitar parts but make it your own. They weren't looking for a copycat performance of the original.
Right.
And at the end of the day, he let me have permission to release that on one of my CDs, which was very cool, and I guess kind of unheard of for his publicist said, Michael, have you ever heard of a Steve Vai song being covered by another artist? I said, no. He said, well, don't think people aren't asking. I thought, wow, he made it sound so nonchalant. But
well, I heard what Steve had to say about the track, and I went back and listened to his, just for a refresher course. And then I went and listened to yours, and what was cool about it, and in my eyes, this is why you were, selected to win. It was an interpretation. You know what I mean? It was completely unvi, and that I know he tripped because you know what he got. He got one submission after another. People trying to be Steve Vai. And could you imagine having to sit there and listen? Now, I'm not saying that those weren't great players. I'm sure they were all, good and they were bringing forth their best. But he was hearing himself. And then your track comes along, and it was unvi. Is that the right way to put it?
Yeah, I guess, first of all, to play like Steve Vai, man, he's a freak of nature. So I've often considered myself more along the lines of, if you mix Jimi Hendrix and Joe Walsh with Eddie Van Halen or something,
Right.
It's more from that school of playing.
And the other thing that's really cool about this is Steve is full on into ufology. So is Satriani. I'm trying to think of Surfing with the Alien, right? That album.
Right on.
And then Alien Love Secrets by Vi, which is still I went and got his book, the tab book on for Alien Love Secrets, and I spent weeks and maybe months learning that entire album. But he is fully immersed into that as well. Did you get a chance to talk UFOs with Steve?
Yeah, actually, that's about all we talked about was more, the spiritual end of things. And he's truly, the elusive light and sound, everything that a lot of his, his production company and stuff is all around light and sound. And actually some of his albums are based around the same concept. He's one of the most enlightened people that I've ever met, and I feel just honored that I got to meet him like that. And I'll tell you what, too, I was so nervous to meet him, like I was being led to meet Lestat or something,
Right.
And he was one of the sweetest guys. The first thing he asked me was, "Are you hungry? Are you thirsty? Do you need anything?" And I was just, "No, man, I'm cool." I was like kind of pinching myself. Like, am I being punked or something? But the craziest stuff kind of unfolded from that, because you mentioned Joe Satriani. I think a lot of people know, but Joe and Steve are like great friends. And at the time he was working with Peavey, and he had a Joe Satriani line of guitar amplifiers out. And before I knew it, I was offered Satriani amp endorsement deal. So they sent me to the NAMM show in LA. And when we were there, I went with David Sarita because we were working on this new mini-series documentary that was released called From Here to Andromeda.
Yes.
And so we're talking to Joe, and here Joe Satriani ends up being a big David Sarita fan and had seen the case for NASA UFOs. So David's like, "Well, we're filming for a new documentary right now. Would you like to be in it?" He's like, "Sure. Meet me in the press room after we get done talking here." So the next thing I know, I'm holding up the shotgun mic, like filming Joe Satriani again. I'm just going, this is some kind of weird dream, man. Talking about, people think meeting extraterrestrials are weird. Meeting my heroes like that was probably more unbelievable to me, because these were my heroes growing up. And then that led to, one of my biggest inspirations ever as being a musician was a gentleman named Dan Reed.
Yes.
And from the Dan Reed Network.
Yep. Oh, man, you're dropping a good one right there. That's, Dan Reed Network. For everybody else in the Midwest, Dan Reed Network was the cat. And that's all I have to say. I mean, the dude.
Right on, man. Well, you'll appreciate this because it gets into everything that we're talking about. But, during the 90s, he just disappeared. And to me, it was like Sting disappeared or something. It's like, hey, what happened to Dan Reed, Right. Here, he was hand-selected by Mick Jagger to open 60 shows for the Rolling Stones. And he said he kind of had this illusion that when you had that kind of success and money that, all your problems went away. And he said he learned that wasn't the case. And simultaneously, he got the gig to go interview the Dalai Lama for Spin Magazine. And he said here he met love. He met this guy that lost everything, but still just emitted nothing but love. So he dropped off of the face of the planet, moved into a Tibetan monastery, and lived with the monks for a while. And so in 2009, he came out of his kind of spiritual pilgrimage and started performing music for the first time. Well, a dear friend of mine knew I was a really big Dan Reed Network fan, so she got us tickets to the Pittsburgh show, which was a 3-hour drive for me. I live in Cleveland, but he wasn't playing in Cleveland. So make a long story short, after the show, I went up and offered him, buy him a drink, and just said, listen, man, I'm a huge fan. And so he asked me if I knew of any place to get a hotel room. He hadn't got a hotel room yet. I said, well, me and my lady friend here, we're in the hotel right next door, and you're more than welcome. So before I knew it, he was staying with us in my hotel room, gave us a private concert back in the room. But where this gets strange is not a lot of people would know this, but Dan is an Arcturian contactee as well. And so about 3 o'clock in the morning, we decided to find a place to go eat, and we're walking along this street, like a couple blocks to this Cambodian food place that was open 24/7. And just out of nowhere, Dan says, Michael, you have the bloodline.
Is right. Okay. Okay.
And I was like, well, yeah, because at this time I didn't know much about it, because the History Channel, which we'll backtrack, but that was in 2008 that I was on the History Channel, and they had my medical and blood work done, and it was revealed I didn't have normal human blood. And at this time, right after that is when I met the Anunnaki, but I still didn't know much about it. Then comes Dan Reed, and out of nowhere, he says, you have the bloodline. I said, well, I don't know much about it. He said, I know, but you will. He said, it's royal blood. And I said, well, I really don't know what that means. He said, I know, but, it'll come. And at this time, we got to the restaurant, and I said, Dan, how did you know about the blood anomaly issue? Did you see the History Channel show? And he said, no. And at this point, I'm really confused, well, how did you know?
Right.
And he said, Michael, it's not coincidence you and I are talking. I am an Arcturian contactee, and I'm here to meet the ancients, as they awaken. And he told me he's here to form a council, which is all happening right now as we speak, which we can get into that later, because it truly gets into who the Native American Indians are and who the true Nephilim bloodline is. And I want to set that straight, because I hear so many researchers now that, in my mind, they're throwing the Anunnaki and the Nephilim under the bus and putting them into this negative connotation that they're the ones behind the Skull and Bones and the Illuminati and the New World Order, and they're the ones pulling all the strings. And so I got some stuff to share that there's a big missing part of the story. But so Dan and I have become like great friends, and like I said, he was one of my biggest inspirations, and I've begun playing I've played guitar for him at the last 4 concerts he's done here in Cleveland, and he stays at my house, and I've been able to pick his brain about what the bloodline means, and I've learned so much from him, and we're like brothers now. You
sent me a Dan Reed video too, didn't you?
Yeah, and his new album, by the way, is called Transmission. Imagine that, right? But I highly suggest everyone to go check it out. Dan Reed Transmission. It's just fantastic. And
the video
on my YouTube, there's some stuff of me and him playing some shows together live as well.
That the video that you sent that to me a while ago, and I just remember it was a cover tune. What was it?
Holy Diver by Dio.
It was Dio.
Imagine that, right?
You sent that to me on Dio's birthday. That's right.
Yeah. I thought you'd dig that.
Right. And so, but anyway, I'm watching, and man, he is so. What's the word I want to use? Perfect? Is that the right word?
Yeah, like supernaturally perfect.
Man,
you know,
man.
I've got the chance to just sit there and watch him play, you know, in my living room, and he's never off. You know, he's
right.
just always. A matter of fact, he's showing me how he played this one part, and I said, Dan, how did you come to be able to do that? Did you just sit and meditate and play that one riff for like hours? He's like, yep. All right, that explains it.
You know, and I was watching the video. Somebody should pull that up. It's got to be on YouTube. Dan Reed Project playing Holy Diver.
Yeah, it's Dan Reed, Michael Lee Hill.
Yeah,
Holy Diver, and Michael Lee is off. He's house left, and gets to play the solo. Man, you get to play the solo at Holy Diver with Dan Reed. How cool is that, man? It's such a great video. It's so surreal. You know, last year I had a Halloween party, and Dan came and actually played my Halloween party. Which, how freaking unbelievable is that? And you know, I've been brought in by the Native American Indian elders, like all these chiefs. They do an event called the Star Knowledge Conference, and I've been brought in as I'm Iroquois Indian, and so I met this Shinto priest. His name was Hideo, and he came up for the Halloween party. So I got this 80-year-old Shinto priest chanting with Dan Reed playing guitar up there. It was just, again, like, what the hell's going on? This is crazy.
So we're going to be up against a break here in 60 seconds. I want to go back to you guys are at this Cambodian restaurant. Mm-hmm. At any point, were you taken aback a little bit? Like, Dan, this is a bit too much, too quick right now.
Yeah, you know what I asked him is, I said, "Who are you?"
Right.
Because I know he's Dan Reed, but obviously there's something more going on.
Right.
And he said, "Michael, I am of the highest of the Most High, who is here to meet and greet the ancients as they awaken and form the Council of 150. You're number 63."
If it wasn't Dan Reed, would you have gotten up and walked away?
No, at that point I had already met the Anunnaki, you know,
right.
and had so many just weird synchronicities and weird things going on in my life that I guess it wouldn't have shocked me too much. But
I mean, fair enough. But like, you know, it's Dan Reed, like you know, like a Steve Vai or an Eddie Van Halen or whoever. You know, the admiration side of it is there. But if it was somebody just coming up off of the street and come at you like that, you might not have stopped and listened. But I'm glad that you did. It just must have been as surreal as it gets. Yeah,
actually, you know, people wouldn't know this, but even on his new CD, there's a song called "There's a Fire in the Pyramid." And right before the album was released, I got an email from him, and he just said, "Michael, I want you to know that this song is about the council being burned alive in the pyramids," because he said we were the magician's class or the priest class of the pharaohs, and that truly it's this bloodline that we can get into. But
well, let's hold it right there. We'll do that right after the break.
Cool.
This is Fade to Black tonight. Michael Lee Hill is with us. Musician, guitar player, Anunnaki. This is Fade to Black. More with Michael Lee Hill right after this short break. Stay with us.
Way out here, we listen to Jimmy Church.
You're listening to Fade to Black.
Always on the edge of the hottest alternative talk. Jimmy Church with Fade to Black. KGRARadio.com.
¿Qué tal, mis amigos? Yo soy Mario Carson, el tiburón, y los invito para que escuchen a mi buen amigo Jimmy Church Radio. ¡Claro que sí!
Did you ever turn to your radio for your favorite talk show to find that it's been preempted for this?
In the air to deep right center. Back goes Lewis to the wall. And it's all here!
Or this?
And I'm ashamed of you, Hillary, for voting for it.
Do you have a favorite talk radio program that's not available in your city? Just go to TalkStreamLive.com for links to the best streaming talk radio shows. At TalkStream Live, you will find live talk shows 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. All your favorites are here. With such a large selection, you will also discover some new favorites. On the go and still want to listen? With the mobile smartphone, simply type TalkStream Live on your internet browser. Now you can take internet radio with you. You will also find hundreds of music, news, and sports streams. Best of all, the TalkStream Live directory is free and there's never a login required. Remember TalkStreamLive.com, the fastest route between you and your favorite talk radio show.
You are listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Oi, oi, I'm Reese Evans. You're listening to Jimmy Church. This is Revolution. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is on radio. Ciao.
Welcome back to Fade to Black. Tonight, Michael Lee Hill is with us. We got a great night lined up on a great week lined up for Fade to Black. Tomorrow night, Paul Eno, the Bell Witch Curse. Wednesday night, the Haunted Housewives are here. Trisha, Teresa, and Kathy. And then Thursday night, Shah, the Loon Witch, will be with us all night. Hey, Michael, check this out. That track that you were just listening to, I'll tell you something really funny about it. Is Doug is just a monster player, right? And I'm a player. I know when something is really good. And we're sitting there cutting tracks, and I would get sucked in, right? I get sucked in. I'm just sitting right in front of him. You know how it's done. And we'd get to the end, and I'd be in this daydream. And then he would go, he'd be like chewing gum, and go, "Hey man, was that good?" I'm like, dude, what? Let me do another one. No. What? It's like that. Doug he's just one of those players, man. He just sucks you in with his talent, and he's just so humble. And now, also on that track, it's kind of synchronicity, kind of weird, is Chris Frazier, who is Steve Vai's drummer on Alien Love Secrets, and also the bass player from Steve Vai's band. So that was it on that track. Dizzy Reed from Guns N' Roses is playing the Fender Rhodes. So that's it.
Oh.
Yeah, that was all cut in a bedroom right here in Sherman Oaks, California.
Wow, stellar.
Yeah, unbelievable. So, and anyway, let's get. I want to. When it comes to the Anunnaki, and you mentioned this earlier, and you're absolutely right. I think that. I've had so many researchers on the show, the positive side of the Anunnaki and the negative side. And I think the negative side comes from I don't want to be negative to any of my guests, but it seems like it's almost sensationalism. Nobody was actually there or knows, the facts about the Anunnaki. And I think that you're right about that. So I want to get the conversation to go in that direction. I want to visit that subject. But before we get there, I want to talk about what happened with UFO hunters and the blood. You went to, was it Harvard?
Yeah, it was Boston. And what happened was they took us. Well, first of all, I'll get into why that even happened. Around 2005, I started seeing these craft. Matter of fact, we're having band practice here at my house. I live very close to Lake Erie. And me and the bass player took a break, and we went out in the backyard, and we seen a craft that was right over the shore of Lake Erie. And like I said, I'm about 10 houses from Lake Erie, so it was really close. And it was probably there for about 10 minutes. So we got a really good look at it. And but I didn't get the camera out. I didn't get that one on film, but it sparked my curiosity to start finding little parks along the lake. And it's kind of cool because up until that point, even though I live really close, we just all get sucked up into 3D life, you know, and I didn't really go down there and enjoy it much. But because of seeing this craft, I started going down to a few parks here locally and just around sunset, you know, and I would just hang out and I'd have my camera on a tripod waiting for, you know, if a big ball of light went by, I was ready to film it. So I started filming a lot of these craft and getting quite a library of footage. And so I decided I was going to start a YouTube account and start uploading some of it. And before I knew it, my YouTube page, which is called Frozen Hill, by the way, that's all one word. People can go check it out. You'll see right now it's over 4.5 million views.
Right.
Just kind of crazy to me. And that brought the History Channel to my door, but at first, all they were doing was doing a show on Skywatchers, and I was going to have like a 5-minute segment on the show. And what they didn't tell me was about 2 weeks prior to coming to Cleveland to interview me, they had interviewed another contactee. His name was Terrell Copeland. And the deal with him, though, was he had filmed the exact same objects as I had, these orbs of light, had the same story of contact, pretty much the same spiritual message given to him as well about becoming responsible for what we're thinking, you know, that thoughts matter more than what we've been led to believe. But he was a Marine, and they were getting ready to ship him off to another country and had a pretty thorough medical exam, and they found this unknown blood anomaly that none of the best military doctors in the world could figure out. So they ended up giving him an honorary discharge. So the History Channel thought, well, how weird is it that he and I had the same story, the same footage? They thought, wouldn't it be weird if we were separated by 500 miles and didn't even know each other, if I ended up with that same blood anomaly that he was discharged from the military over? So what they did was they flew us both to Boston, took us to whatever the major Boston University or whatever it is, the hospital there. And they had a Harvard doctor, a Harvard professor. His name was David Systrom. Did our blood work, and sure enough, my levels were almost identical, which I can get into. The difference that they found is an enzyme called creatine kinase. And creatine kinase is released by everyone's brains. The normal amounts are 25 parts per liter of blood. But if you've had a heart attack or muscle damage, it can jump up to about 300 to 350 tops. And the extra creatine kinase releases more oxygen into the bloodstream to facilitate healing. So if normal amounts are 25 parts per liter of blood, what they found was mine and Terrell's were right about 2,100.
Whoa.
Which, if you think about, the more creatine kinase in the bloodstream equals how much oxygen is in the bloodstream. And what I found out was the more oxygen in the bloodstream, the more electricity you can hold at a cellular level. It's kind of like chi or life force,
Interesting.
Yeah, so it was really interesting because the last day is when, they were doing the filming there at the hospital. And all this is on the show, by the way. If anyone wants to see it, it is available on YouTube, and it's called Alien Contact, and it's from the UFO Hunters Season 1.
Okay.
But the last day, they just announced, the doctor came in, said, yep, you have this blood anomaly as well, and put me on a plane home that same day. I was like, wait a minute. This isn't a TV show any longer. You just told me I don't have normal human blood. And they said, well, we don't know what to tell you.
Well, how many?
So that was the first thing.
Well, Mike, let me jump in really quick.
Right on.
How many people have this blood type? I mean, in like out of 1,000 or 100,000 people?
As far as I know, it was totally unknown. What we can get into is after this, it was said on the UFO Hunters show. And by the way, I never knew what the History Channel thought of the show. And here in a book that was released called UFO Hunters, the book, I found out that it was a fan favorite in my episode, which ended up being the whole show, by the way.
Right.
Is the reason that UFO Hunters was even
picked up for another season.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
So what had happened was in that it was predicted that me and Terrell were going to be contacted by a secret group of the government who's in charge of looking into the extraterrestrial subject for the powers that be. And sure enough, that happened. Why I'm telling you this is that group told me they had about 180 members of their group, and that 12 of their members were of my bloodline, and my numbers of 2,100 would put me in about the middle of those 12.
Who contacted you?
His name was A.R. Borden,
okay,
and he was the head of this group. And this is the remote viewers. You know, these are the people who look into extra consciousness, you know, like how to send your consciousness somewhere else and perceive. But we can get into that. That's a fascinating subject because I've learned a lot from them and did a lot of work with them. But what had happened was that show aired in March of 2008. And in the summer of 2008 is when a friend of mine, she owned a metaphysical jewelry store where she sold crystals and jewelry and whatnot. Mm-hmm. And she was going to a festival called Sirius Rising. And at this point, I didn't even know what an Anunnaki was. I didn't know they are the Sirians. They are from Sirius. But I just thought I was going camping. And this is in New York. And when I was there, I was met for the first time by the Anunnaki. And how that happened was I was taken under the wing by one of them. And he at one point just said, I'm going to go back to the campground and see if everything's buttoned down and safe. And I said, sure, I'll go with you. And when we got back there, there was a structure that they called the genie bottle because it was round. It was kind of like a gazebo, but it had really beautiful fabric all the way on the inside, and it had a round couch. And it was all lit by candlelight. And when I walked into it, there was a male and a female that were on the bed. And it was interesting because the beginning of this meeting with them, which they had told me that they had been known in the past as the Anunnaki. And at that point, there was no Ancient Aliens on TV. This is 2008. Ancient Aliens started in 2009.
Right.
I didn't know what an Anunnaki even was. He had asked me if I knew anything about a senior scientist from Lockheed Martin whose name was Boyd Bushman, and how that this gentleman, David Sarita, ended up on Coast to Coast talking about Boyd Bushman. And I said, I know everything about that. That's mine and David's film. What had happened, you know who John Hutchinson is?
Of course.
Right on. Well, John had been contacted by Lockheed Martin, and they wanted him to go work for them. Well, John hooked us up with Boyd Bushman, which, by the way, this is the same Boyd Bushman that just did a deathbed confessional.
Right.
And he showed some grays, and right away they had this cover story that it was just a Kmart doll or some BS.
Yeah, from Walmart. From Walmart. And I just a little side note. I had yesterday or the day before read Boyd Bushman's FBI file. 74 pages, and I read all of it, and it was pretty interesting, and more on that in a bit. So back to the genie bottle and this couple.
Yeah, they said, how did this information get out regarding Boyd Bushman? Mind you, this is 2008.
Right.
So, Boyd Bushman is the real deal, they wouldn't have been approaching me like this if it was any other way. But they said, well, you've caused a lot of problems for us behind the scenes. This gentleman said, I work with a group of people who decides what gets released to the public regarding the extraterrestrial subject, and this Boyd Bushman information was not on the list. Since we're the ones who control what gets released, how could this have happened? And then I answered, well, I willed it into manifestation. I think it's BS that this information has been withheld from humanity. And at this point, he seemed kind of confused, and he said, you know what, we need to know what you know. And he pulled out a purple wand that, well, it was a wand that had like a purple diode, a light at the end of it. And I could feel it stimulating my third eye. And it didn't hurt or nothing. It actually felt good because I probably started to release a little DMT, you know.
Right, sure.
But as a matter of fact, I remember going, truth serum. I'm like, all right, have at it, you know. Well, I heard what happens is they can go right through to your Akashic records, and they can see every life you've ever lived and everyone you've ever been or will be, you know. And that's when things changed. They said, oh, my God, you're one of us. They said, we don't know how it is that you came here, but we've been waiting for you to show up. And now that you're here, if it's okay with you, we can have this council meeting. Now, mind you, right before this, it was a pretty antagonistic
conversation. Yes.
Yeah. There were some death threats coming out about this Boyd Bushman stuff coming out, you know.
Right.
Now, all of a sudden, it was totally the opposite. That was a little strange. And I said, well, what was this meeting over? And they said, well, there'll be a celestial object visible in the sky soon, and it won't be questionable. It won't be debatable, and it's going to lead people, you know, to this bed of knowledge. And they wanted to know all of our opinions on what effect that we thought it would have on government and religion and economics. And, you know, I thought...
How did they... Mike, let me ask you this. I just said Mike. How informal. Michael, let me...
That's all good.
What was their presence like? Can you describe, you know, how old were they? Were you tripping out?
It was scary because they were faceless. And I found out that's kind of like a calling card. You find out that this whole no-face mythos, you know, who I met was Marduk. And Marduk in Egypt was known as Ra, and Ra was known as the hidden one. And this same intelligence has come and communicated to me through 2 human vessels, just not one. I know this is strange, but and both times, you know, the second time what had happened was, you know, this individual, the conversation went to another level that was just very enlightened, and I never had a talk with this person like this. And I said, you know, you're not from around here, kind of jokingly. And he said, Michael, look at my face and tell me what you see. And at this point, he became faceless in front of me again. And I said, you look just like the person I met in New York. He said, bingo, nice to talk to you again. And at this point, I was really freaked out because I've known this person for a while and never had any inkling of, you know, this other personality coming through. And again, you know, it seems to be my common question for people, but who are you? And he said, I am the muse. I inspire creativity, wit, and humor in the human race.
Help me out on this really quick. When you say faceless, was it because there was a shadow there, or are you saying there was a transformation of a face to no face?
I can tell you what I've learned from. Well, we can get into, you know, A.R. Borden's, the NSA secret group, but they told me that the Anunnaki have this extra chi or you know, energy at a cellular level, and they can project an image right into your own neural network of what they want you to perceive. It's not that they're shapeshifters per se, but they can send an image right into your own nervous system to make you aware that you're not dealing with a normal human.
Right.
And then,
I got you. No,
so what happened is the minute...
Hold on.
Sure.
Stop. This is an incredible moment. I'm just trying to live in the moment here, so just bear with me.
Right on.
Marduk must be, I don't even know, how old? How old are we talking? And did he have that image of age, or was he locked into youth? How did that come off to you?
Well, what I must say is I've never met an Anunnaki in their native form, which I heard is anywhere from 8 to 16 feet tall.
Right.
And they're tall albinos, 6 fingers.
Right.
6 toes.
Right.
But the Anunnaki have a human hybrid bloodline on this planet known as the Nephilim. And we can get into why that is, because it deals with the whole story, and plus why there's a perception of the Anunnaki being evil and good, because there's something that happened along the way. But I've met, every time that I've spoken with the Anunnaki, it came through a Nephilim individual, Anunnaki human hybrid that the Anunnaki are communicating through. So I just want to make that clear.
I got you. Okay. And could you feel Marduk's wisdom? I mean, it's infinite. Could you feel that power?
No, because I'll tell you, at first it was antagonistic. And right when I walked into the genie bottle, it's like I could see everything up to their necks. But right when it got to their faces, matter of fact, the first thing I said is, "Can I see your faces?" He said, "No, you'll have to wait till tomorrow to see our true faces." And I was thinking, tomorrow? Well, I'm going to be with you tomorrow as well? Okay, and I was. But they were high-ranking members from NASA, as it turned out. Both him and the female that was with him were both, I know their names and everything. I'm not going to put that out. But, they work for NASA. As a matter of fact, he told me that he was a family member of the J. Allen Hynek family, which, if the listeners probably know, J. Allen Hynek was the head of the Project Blue Book.
Right.
And he went on to say that family is still in charge of what gets released to the public. And he told me some things about J. Allen Hynek, actually. He said that he hated the position the government put him in, because they would make him say one thing one day, and then the next day they would make him totally contradict himself. But right away I couldn't see their faces. And so what happened was, the next morning, well, let me back up, because I just want to go into detail, because the meeting did happen, what they were talking about. And some other individuals came in to this structure. And as far as what I got from Marduk was, at first it was antagonistic, but once he did the mind probe, or whatever you want to call it, to see my Akashic records, everything changed, and he was actually, I don't know how to word this, like,
subservient.
Yeah, exactly. Tears in his eyes. At the end of this meeting, this other individual went up and put his arm around him and said, "Don't worry, my king, now you can finally rest." Because you find out, Marduk, I can understand, maybe this is a good time to get into this, because, there's a reason the Nephilim was created, and it's not because, this story that's going around like they were horny space guys. You know what I mean? Like, that's the lowest common denominator of what happened. And it's truly because the background of who the Anunnaki are. They were coming through this part of the solar system, their planet Nibiru. And by the way, here's some inside info. Anunnaki and Nibiru are our words for them and their planet. That's not what they call themselves. Their planet is called the Sa'amai, 3 syllables. The people of the Sa'amai are the Sa'am, and then that translated into the Western language is Sam, S-A-M. So when you deal with people on the inside, they call them just the Sam. But they had been coming through this part of the solar system, and they needed gold they would put it into a powderized form and put it up into their atmosphere to shield it from our solar system's solar radiation and whatnot when it came through. And they used it as well in a form of monatomic gold, which almost looks like a white powder substance that they snort, and it gives them very long life. But they were here mining gold for 400 years before humankind was even thought of. And what had happened was, I'm glad that this movie Interstellar came out with Matthew McConaughey, because it kind of gets into this time dilation aspect of, like Albert Einstein's twins paradox. It says if one twin gets in a spaceship and has another twin that stays on planet Earth, and the twin in a spaceship goes and travels for like 5 years near the speed of light, when he returns back to the planet, 500 years might have passed on the planet.
That's right.
The same way in the movie Interstellar, it kind of gets into that, where they're like, well, this planet's going at a different rate, or the gravity's different. You're going to perceive time differently. Well, when the Anunnaki came to planet Earth, and by the way, this is actually proven by today's science. They said like an airplane can have an atomic clock on it, and it has a ground-based counterpart atomic clock, and just at the speed a jet flies, when it returns, there'll be a few milliseconds off.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, and the strange thing is, like in the twins paradox, Albert Einstein, each of their wristwatches is still clicking 1 second equals 1 second. To each of them, there's no difference until they come back into another timeline. And so if you think about this in the fact that all of our planets are traveling at different speeds through the ether, that time is experienced differently. Like, I'm sure you've heard that there are stargates, like in some of these secret underground bases, like at Pine Gap.
Mm-hmm.
What I learned from some of these insiders is, if you go through the Stargate at Pine Gap to Mars, when right now on Mars you would be in Earth's past if you try to communicate back. Which, as weird as it sounds, I guess that's the physics of how things do operate. And like I said, I think it's really great that some Hollywood movies are starting to hit on this, because that was the problem with the Anunnaki. They were called the heroes because when they left their planet to come to Earth, they experienced time differently. And it got to be where there was going to be a civil war, because these workers, the heroes, the Anunnaki workers that were coming here to mine the gold, to them it was almost like a death sentence to come here and do the work. So they were going on strike, and the king of Nibiru his name was Anu, and you don't go against the king, in many cultures, and they were going to be they're sending teams here to wipe out these Anunnaki heroes. And what had happened was, Anu had a son. His firstborn son was named Ea, and he became known as Enki, which Enki is not a name, it's a title. It means Lord of the Earth. The big deal of this is Enki's mother is not Anunnaki. She was what's known as Elohim, or Wingmaker.
Mm-hmm.
And so for the first time in the Anunnaki family tree, you had new blood, new DNA coming into the family tree. And so what had happened was, Prince Enki was being raised to be king, because his father was the king. And further on down the line, though, he stopped that relationship with this Elohim concubine and mated with a Anunnaki female, and they had another son, which would have been Enki's younger brother, and his name was Enlil. And the reason this is important is, in their own succession of kingship, a pureblood got the throne over a half-blood.
Right.
So the throne ended up going to Enlil, and Enlil became known as like the Jehovah of the Bible, like the one that really vengeful and didn't really care much for mankind, And the reason all this is important was they realized 25,000 years ago that there was going to be a pole shift here on this planet, and this became Noah's flood myth and all of that, But they had told Enki to remove the fish from the water, because Enlil was like, well, if these humans are going to perish anyhow, and at that point there was about 400 million of us on the planet, and their technology of Merkaba spiritual light craft technology, it didn't help lift off 400 million of us. So they said, it must be God's will. Let them perish. Well, that didn't sit well with Inky, because Inky considered his family. It was his own DNA that was used to tweak the human primate that became Homo sapien. So it was kind of unheard of for one of them to defy their race, but that's what Inky did. And he went to his mother's side and said, isn't there anything that can be done? My race is going to let this beautiful race that has so much potential just perish and not even try to lift a finger. And the elders of his mother's side said, well, even if we try this idea of yours, this ark, is this species going to evolve quick enough to be ready for this dimensional shift that's coming at the very end of this grand cycle, which was December 2012. But this is thousands of years ago. And the answer was no, because even in the Sumerian clay tablets, the cuneiform tablets, it says that mankind was brought into what was called the Eden. Well, that sounds familiar, right?
Right.
And the first human was the Adam, or Adamu. And because, a lot said that we were brought here to be slaves. And in one sense, I guess it is true, but from what I understand, we were more like pampered pets. There was no homeless. There was no starvation. Humans were very well taken care of, and we lived side by side with the Anunnaki. But because of this, there was no catalyst for change, and we were not evolving fast enough for us to be really ready for what would this dimensional shift. So they said, well, why build the ark if this is going to happen anyhow? And so they said, what else could be done? And they said, well, what if we help mankind evolve faster, evolve their consciousness at an accelerated rate by making mankind experience its own mental energy in an accelerated fashion, both light and dark, unbiasedly. Like whatever you put out, you're going to get back in an amplified way. And they said, well, that's interesting. It's really never been done before in a cosmic way. Truly we're talking about bringing duality, or what could be thought of as free will, into mankind's psyche. And they said, well, that's really interesting, but you can't just do that to an upcoming race when it's never been tried before, unless you're willing to go through it with them and become human in every way and walk a mile in their moccasins, so to speak. So they said, this is Inky's side specifically. So they tried. Inky said, sure, we'll come in and help. But when they tried to incarnate into the human vessel, they had too much chi. They had too much energy, and their bodies would spontaneously combust. So at this point, they're trying to rethink it, and they said, well, what if we make an offshoot of the human DNA that has more chi or electrical capacitance at a cellular level available, hence the creatine kinase that they found in my blood.
Right.
So the human vessel would have more, well, we wouldn't explode, right? Or burst into flames. So this was the true creation of the Nephilim bloodline on this planet. And what I can tell you is, so at this point, we're talking about the Anunnaki implementing this experiment in duality. And Graham Hancock, on his documentary called The Quest for the Lost Civilization, which I highly recommend to anyone that's not seen it.
It's amazing.
He came across this mural, and it was a beautiful telling of Anunnaki spirituality. It was called The Myth of the Churning of the Milky Ocean. And he said the most important part of this myth was the Milky Ocean itself, because in their own mythology, it was the Milky Ocean that the whole universe and all of the galaxies and everything rested in. And this Milky Ocean had two teams of churners, a team of light and a team of darkness. But it wasn't a matter of one beating the other one, or the light trying to beat the dark, or the dark trying to beat the light. The fact was that they were working in cooperation to churn the Milky Ocean to help mankind evolve into the higher realms. So if you think of this mythology, I call them Team Good Cop and Team Bad Cop. Marduk is the person who is spiritually tasked with reflecting back a negative polarity. And all of these secret societies are catering to Marduk. This is where it gets confusing, because it's almost was Marduk's job to oversee human mass consciousness. And if someone was vibrating fear, they would come in and make sure that that person gets the chance to experience their own dark thought form, because they understand that mental energy has electromagnetic reality, and energy can't be created or destroyed. We even know this with today's physics. It has to be transmuted. So no one's really asked it, well, how do you transmute a negative thought form? Well, the answer is you live it. It comes up in your own personal reality for you to choose something better, And once you do that, you'll transmute that thought form into love, and you'll be done and over with it. If you don't transmute it, it'll keep happening over and over and over in your life. You'll say, why does this same crap keep happening to me? Well, it's because you haven't transmuted it. But that's just Team Bad Cop. But you can say you're a human and you have a lot of fear and doubt and garbage in your belief system, and you're catering to a multidimensional being whose spiritual purpose it is to reflect back a negative polarity. You're probably going to perceive them as a demon, because they're making you experience your own dark baggage.
Right.
But on the flip side, you got Team Good Cop, and that's my bringing in this with Inky. This other side has been inspiring us into how light and sound creates physical reality, and sacred geometry and music and higher culture, and trying to guide us into the higher realms. And so what I want to get into, and I think this is fascinating, because all the researchers that I see, they're just focusing on Team Bad Cop. And what I can tell you is it's proven now through scientific new DNA testing of who the mound builders were in ancient North America, who left these mound sites all over, like Serpent Mound and Newark Earthworks, and all through Ohio, New York, and Pennsylvania. And what your listeners can do is go to Google and Google haplogroup X. Haplogroup is one word, X, self-explanatory.
Right.
What haplogroups are is being able to trace back a DNA lineage in time using new DNA testing. And it was only in 1997 that this new haplogroup was discovered. And that's not that long ago if you think about it. And it really throws our history books upside down, because the only place that haplogroup X is found is in the skeletal remains that have been removed out of these mounds, which they're mostly giant, really tall stature, skeletal remains. But 3% of the Native American Indian tribes still have haplogroup X DNA running through the tribes still to this day, which this is an interesting point in itself, because now proven in DNA, a few generations ago, these haplogroup X DNA beings were giants. Now they're not. I am haplogroup X. I am Iroquois Indian. So I think it gets into why abductions are even still happening, because this genetic work really hasn't stopped. And for the Nephilim to do what they needed to do, they needed not to be 15, 16 feet tall and be able to fit in. But what I can tell you as well, with haplogroup X being in these giant skeleton remains removed from the mounds and the Native American Indian tribes still to this day. And by the way, 3% is probably very low because many Native American Indians have never had their blood tested like this. So it could be much higher. But it's in ancient Israel.
Oh, what about
as well? And I've not. Go ahead.
Yeah, Mike, what about your family, brothers, sisters? Have they had their blood tested, and what were those results?
I was adopted at very young, and boy, this gets into a whole other.
Okay.
But I did meet my biological mother for the first time, and that's when I found out. See, at this point with the History Channel and all this, I never met my biological mother or parents. And it was the Harvard professor and the History Channel said, listen, if you can contact your biological parents, you probably should to see if this is something hereditary, like maybe it's passed down and it's a common thing. So I contacted late 2008 is when I met my biological mother for the first time. And I met my two half-sisters, and that's when I found out who my biological father was. I don't know if you know this, but it was brought up in the UFO Hunters book because it was the History Channel who asked me to contact my biological mother. So they knew who I found out was my biological father, and that is Eric Clapton, which that was kind of a mind rape. But it turns out, man, it's very connected to what we're talking about because some of these bloodlines, what I've found out is Edgar Cayce predicted everything that we're talking about long ago. And he said that the remnants of the Atlanteans became the mound builders who intertwined into the Native American Indian tribes.
Right. Well, hold on. You can't just say Eric Clapton's my dad and move on to another guitar player. It doesn't work that way. So let's back up a step. Have you contacted Clapton?
I've had an avenue to open up that dialogue, and I haven't chosen it because, man. Okay. Eric was brought up into this secret societies, and they weren't nice people. And it wasn't Eric. Eric actually tried to fight against all of this, and some interesting stuff there. But make a long story short, it wasn't Eric, but the people who handled Eric, if you want to look at it that way,
sure,
they already had this relationship set up with Alice Gumsy Gore, I believe was her name, and her father was a lord in England, and he was the ambassador to the United States and had very long reach into the entertainment industry, and they already had Eric Clapton going out of Cream and becoming Eric Clapton the superstar, and this lord in England was going to help him do this, and they set him up with his daughter. Well, me and my biological mother was not part of that, and they pretty much made it a point to her to scare her to the point that she would never talk about any of this, and did some things to her that was absolutely horrible. And even when Eric found out, it was, he didn't know anything about it. And so to make a long story short, a friend of mine, you find out Eric lives in Columbus, Ohio. His wife and the wife of his recent children, they were from Columbus. And even though Eric has houses all over the planet, that's where he spends most of his time because of his wife's family being there. And a friend of mine does computer systems, and he just so happens to do Eric's mechanic for his cars, believe it or not. That's how this stuff works. If I was ever going to meet Eric, it would be through his mechanic.
Yeah, right. Yeah, of course.
He wanted to talk to my biological mother first, and I just wasn't willing to do that because of the trauma that she's been through over all of this. And to me, I'm really close with my mother and father that raised me, and it's really, I know it sounds kind of silly, but it's not that big of an issue to me. And sooner or later, like I said, it's in this UFO Hunters book. It's like not my opinion. I'm not making this crap up. But I know it's true from a lot of things that have that I've learned from my biological mother, that she learned from Eric, and Eric knew all this was happening. But I can tell you one thing, as one guitar player to another guitar player, anytime I'm going to try to learn a song, I'll sit there and just listen to it first without even a guitar, but I just got my ears going, you know what I mean, to try to just really tune in and listen. And I was listening to Crossroads by Cream, and I was thinking, oh my God, this is going to be really, really difficult to learn, So after I went through it one time, I grabbed my guitar and I went to learn it, and it just pretty much fell out of me. Like within one or two times through, I had the whole song. I was like, wow. But that was before I even knew anything about this. But
wow, that's pretty trippy, and you can't discount the fact that you have extreme talent as a musician too as well. And we're sitting here talking about DNA, but the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. That's just the way it is. That's the way life works. Hey, Michael, let's go back for a second to the genie bottle, if you can. When you said that Marduk, you said a couple of things. One, that Marduk actually worked for NASA, or the couple did, the both of them.
Yeah.
And that the next day you would hang out again. Was it the next day that you found out about this NASA connection? And before you answer that, was Marduk physically this guy, or was he projected into this guy's brain? In other words, was this guy somebody else and then would be Marduk some of the time? Am I making sense?
Yeah, that's actually a proper way to describe it. This was a Nephilim human vessel that Marduk came through, and how I understand it is, it's a resonance thing. Like each of the Anunnaki have a Nephilim bloodline on this planet, and it sounds like to me they could resonate and kind of jump on the pineal gland, third eye, and come in and speak, and when they do, in my case, they become faceless, is how they let me know I'm dealing with someone else. But
are you cool with that, or is it?
No, well, I am now, but it scared me the second time, especially because this was a friend. I was supposed to stay over there that night, and he proved to me, man, this gets really strange, but I'll tell you what happened. It was in a hot tub when I told you the second individual said, Michael, look at my face and tell me what you see. And, I said, you look just like the person in New York. And he said, bingo, nice to talk to you again. Well, when he told me that he inspires, when I asked him, who are you? And he said, I'm the muse. I inspire creativity, wit, and humor in the human race. He asked me if I wanted to see a movie that he inspired. And I'm going to tell your listeners what it was, but I think that they do this to make you sound insane if you ever try to explain it. Okay. But what he did was, when we got out of the hot tub, which his face had returned, by the way, which was good, we walked into his house, and he put on a movie, and it was by this guy, Steve Odekirk, which he did the Ace Ventura, When Nature Calls.
Yes.
Kung Pao, Enter the Fist. And he did these movies where all the characters were done with thumbs with like faces superimposed over them, and he did like thumb wars.
Yes.
Instead of,
I love them. Oh,
aren't they great?
There's a
well, that's what he put on was Bat Thumb.
Okay.
And I'm thinking, all right, this is strange. But if you recall, when Bat Thumb comes against his arch nemesis, his name was No Face. And when he pulled off the hoodie, if you recall, there was just a thumb there. There was no face on it.
Right.
I never told him anything about being faceless. All I said to him was, you look just like the person I met in New York. He said, bingo. Want to see a movie I inspired? Well, the villain is No Face. And I got it. He looked at me. He was grinning. It freaked me out so bad that, I was going to stay there that night, and I came up with some excuse like, I forgot. I got something to do in the morning.
Right.
Right. I didn't really know how to process it. So, yeah, it freaked me out. It's as much as I could say.
There's a Kung Pao Enter the Fist Part 2 coming out.
I heard that. That's one of my favorite movies ever. I'm always quoting lines from Kung Pao and Earth of Fist, so I'm really excited about that.
Product placement, Taco Bell.
Yes, indeed.
Taco Bell.
I always, when I'm going to sleep, I'm like, sleepy time.
Sleepy time.
You know, Evil Betty.
Man, Evil Betty is the best, man. Rita and I have seen that movie. I don't know, 100 times. You know, we went through a really bad Kung Pao phase, and everything about, anyway, let's stay on Anunnaki, because I could talk about Kung Pao Enter the Fist for the rest of the night. And
right on.
If I drop the Taco Bell product placement Taco Bell jingle, you know I'm being serious. And
oh yeah,
and that is that. So now, how did you find out about? We're going to be up against a break, so let's do this really quick.
Mm-hmm.
How did you find out about this NASA connection? Was that something that they discussed with you?
Yeah, they told me.
Okay, well, tell me about, what they said and how they said it.
Well, they said that they were, high members of NASA, and he said that he was part of the J. Allen Hynek family, and that family is still in charge of what gets released to the public regarding the extraterrestrial subject, and that was it, pretty much.
Were you able to confirm that he was who he said he was? Have you seen pictures of him at NASA and so forth?
Yeah, actually, it was the NSA group. They were not happy, by the way, that I was met by Marduk's group first. And they sent me about a 3-page, I don't know what you call it, e-book or e-letter. And in it, they asked me, they sent me about 6 pictures and said, was this individual any one of these people? And sure enough, it was one of those people. It was just a younger picture of him. And they knew who he was. They knew. And they told me that using their remote viewing, which, by the way, they have technology, because they've been behind the scenes in some technology transfer programs with the Anunnaki already. So imagine Anunnaki technology assisted remote viewing. They went and remote viewed my meeting with the Anunnaki, and they told me that it was confirmed by them that they had the energetic signatures of the ground crew, the Marduk-led Anunnaki here. They also confirmed that the Anunnaki I was in contact with over Lake Erie was from the incoming kingdom. 2 different groups of Anunnaki had been making contact with me. But did that answer the question?
Yes, it did. What's great about this conversation that we're having tonight, all of this started with you on the park bench with your camera at Lake Erie.
Yes, indeed.
And here we are at this part of the conversation. It's absolutely fascinating and riveting. Now that I did that, I'm sorry to cut you off.
It's all good.
Are you still seeing and taping objects out at Lake Erie?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And that's what I'd like to get into after the break is, I'm sure you know who Bigelow Aerospace is, the owners of Skinwalker Ranch. I've been contacted. There was a mass sighting, a wave here in 2011 where for 10 days in a row they were seen out over the lake, and it made it all the way to MSNBC, covered it. And at that point, I was contacted by a Bigelow investigator. His name was Gary Hernandez, and we formed a friendship. And they told me that they knew what I was in contact over the lake is the real deal, because it's exactly the same thing that they've been studying over the Utah Skinwalker Ranch, which we can get into, what I learned from that investigator.
And how does it, I've watched a bunch of your videos. How does that, is it different now than when you first started seeing the objects? In that, are you in direct contact? Are you manipulating?
Yeah. It started off with I really hate filming them because I had an older, it was like a Sony digital Handycam, and the screen in it is actually a black and white viewfinder. So you can imagine this beautiful multicolored orb of light is out there over the lake, and I'm looking at it through a little gray black and white viewfinder, and I just wanted to look at it, but I knew it was important for me to document what was happening. So, I would film it. But what happened was after 2 years or so, I started to have a lot of footage. So telepathically, I would just say, listen, I got some great footage. I'm not filming anything else unless you come in closer or do some kind of behavior that I've not seen. I'm not having, that I don't have on film. And sure enough, they would come in closer and closer. And I got to the point where I filmed them going in and out of the lake. And it all gets into what is in this area. And, which is fascinating because, to get in there, I'll say that A.R. Borden, the head of this remote viewers group, asked me if I knew what was underneath this area. And I said no. And he said, well, it's the oldest underground base on the planet, and it's not ours. And what I can tell you is it's this area in particular has had UFO activity going back into the 1800s. I've found a few newspaper articles from this area back then, and these people called them wizard lights, and would think that there's maybe a ship on fire, that there was a mirage making it look like it was above the horizon, and they'd send ships out, and there would be no ship, no shipwreck, nothing ever came ashore. But fast forward to the 1988, it's a pretty famous UFO case they called it a Coast Guard event, where this huge triangular ship was over the CEI coal plant, and they called the Coast Guard. The Coast Guard came down and made an actual Coast Guard report, and Richard Dolan has considered this one of the top 10 UFO cases because of its government documentation backing it up. And it's been covered now recently in some of the new UFO shows that's been on TV. But that's my hometown. It's the exact same activity. It's still ongoing to this day. You asked me if it was still ongoing. I can share with you, my mother was really scared of this subject, and she didn't like me being involved with it at all, and kind of thought I was insane. And I got a call from her last summer, and she said, I'm never going to say anything to you again. I walked outside, and there was a big orb of light over the tree. She said, I was in awe. I couldn't even move. And as she was watching it, another one showed up right next to it. That snapped her out of her,
skepticism.
Or being paralyzed, actually. She said she couldn't even move. She was in shock, kind of. When the second one showed up, she ran and pounded on the door and got my father to come out, and both of them are sitting there watching these two orbs of light. And then she said one disappeared, and then the other one just shot straight up in the sky, became just a little pinprick of light, and then flew away. So yeah, she's not skeptical anymore.
Let's take another break, and when we come back, we have a few things that we have to get out of the way. We've got to talk about A.R. Borden and the NSA, how they approached you, who, what, and where, and of course, we have to talk about the alien agenda and why they are here. We haven't touched upon any of that. This is Fade to Black. Our guest tonight is Michael Lee Hill. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Absolutely fascinating conversation, and this is what Fade to Black is all about. More with Michael Lee Hill when we come back right after this break. Stay with us.
Hi everybody, this is Rob Halford, the Metal Guard on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
KGRA Radio. Intelligent talk.
Are you a paranormal investigator, ghost hunter, or UFO skywatcher? If so, FNGinnovations.com has the product you definitely need in your investigations kit or go bag. Introducing the Morpholite Wide Beam Tactical Flashlights that put the light where you need it most. Traditional flashlights shine a focused round beam with limited line of sight in the dark. Morpholite Tactical Flashlights change all that, utilizing a revolutionary wide beam design to enable you to see safety hazards such as hanging wires and steel, pipes, and holes in the floor you just can't see with a focused round beam. In the field, where safety is paramount, a 180-degree beam increases orientation and peripheral vision in the dark. Morpholite flashlights are ideal for investigations in abandoned facilities such as houses and hospitals, factories, caves, and tunnels. Avoid those low-hanging tree branches that poke your eyes in the woods. Visit FNGinnovations.com to see a full line of tactical lights and accessories. That's FNGinnovations.com.
Now you can find all your favorite talk radio shows live, all in one place at TalkStreamLive.com. Listen from anywhere, office, home, or in your car. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com and click on one of the many live talk show hosts you want to listen to. It's free and easy. No computer? Download the smartphone apps. Never miss your favorite talk show. Find them all at TalkStreamLive.com.
You want to know a secret? I love ponies. I really love ponies. I'm serious. I couldn't stay sane without ponies to brush.
Why fade to black? Because you never got that pony. Damn
it. This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
Welcome back to Fade to Black. You can follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio. The sandbox is hashtag F2B. Yeah, as you can imagine, the conversation is vibrant tonight. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. We have musician and guitar player Anunnaki. Michael Lee Hill is with us tomorrow night. Paul Eno and the Bell Witch Curse, the first poltergeist here in the United States in the early 1800s. Wednesday night, the Haunted Housewives, Teresa and Kathy, will be here. Thursday night, our Halloween special show with Shah, the Loon Witch. Michael, let's go back in time just a little bit. I mentioned before the break, A.R. Borden, and you were told, and it happened, that you would be contacted by the government. And A.R. Borden comes into the picture, and we're also dealing with the NSA here. So take us through that. And did he whip out like a badge, or how did he reveal that the NSA was involved?
No, there's no badge involved. What had happened was in the 90s, I was pretty well guided to a bed of information called the Wingmakers. If you're familiar with that,
I have all.
If not, check out wingmakers.com.
I have all of the books right here in front of me.
Oh, right on. Well, A.R. Borden is 15. How about that?
Yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah, and the group we're talking about is the ACIO from the Wingmakers and the Labyrinth group, and AR was the head of the ACIO and the Wingmakers. But what had happened was I was pretty well fascinated with the Wingmakers material even back in the 90s, and I had started reading what's called the Dr. Neruda interviews on there. Yes. And what I did was, being a student of the ufology subjects, anytime I would see a name, I would go and research it. And sure enough, the person is who they said it was, and it was accurate. And sometimes it would give examples of reverse engineering technology that was released to the public, and if anything could be traced back to the Labyrinth group. And sure enough, they gave an example of some quantum computing extraterrestrial computer algorithms that were given to Russia for their MiG fighter jets, for their radar systems. That this gets really interesting, by the way, because of some stuff that was kept out of Colonel Corso's book, Day After Roswell, that rotated around this, because we almost went to war in the 60s with Russia, but it was stopped because of the sharing of this technology with them for their MiG fighter jets. But so anyhow, I started to really understand some of these concepts from the Neruda interviews, especially a subject matter called LERM, which is light encoded reality matrix that they talk about. And what this is you'll find out that Tibetans have a subject called tulpas, Tulpa. What that is these Tibetan monks will meditate on the thought form of a revered monk with such tenacity that deceased monk will manifest in the physical. And it's not real. Like it comes innate with its own built-in consciousness and personality, that the people that are willing it into existence, they're not doing that. And for all intents and purposes, it is that master returning to the physical, and everyone can perceive it. Well, what the NSA did was say, how about if we put this into a science where we can learn how light and sound create physical reality, and they called it light encoded reality matrix. So because of being a student of this subject matter, I came across some leaked papers that a person named James Casbolt had leaked onto the internet, and it was all about LERM. And I knew from the Wingmaker stuff that what it was, but this was a whole brand new release of information that had nothing to do with the Wingmakers. So I tracked down where it came from, which was A.R. Borden, and I contacted them, just dry contacted them, and said, I would like to learn more about this. And pretty much they said, well, instead of, they use that quote, why teach a man, why give a man a fish when you can teach him how to fish?
Right.
They said, instead of us just giving you this, we would like to give you a course of study and, an internship. And that began my relationship with A.R. Borden, or who's known as 15. Like I said, when I first met Marduk, though, they kicked me out of the group for a full year. He said, you've come in contact with the people who's trying to put us out of business, and we're trying to put them out of business. And they said no one who has ever met them is allowed to be a part of our organization, and we really apologize, but we're going to have to let you go. And I was like, well, how can I control who comes into my reality and says hello? I thought it was pretty ridiculous, but from what I understand now and what he told me was, after a year of keeping tabs on me and remote viewing and knowing that I was my own person, well, I can tell you, if they want to know what's in your blood, they don't mess around. They sent a female agent into my life posing to be a girlfriend, and after 2 months, she took a blood sample from me without my permission, and that's what. After that, I was contacted by them again and said, we know what's in your blood now, and we know you're not affiliated with Marduk's minions, and we're starting a new study on LERM and teaching people how to do this, and we would like you to come back aboard. And so after talking with AR and getting back onto having some type of relationship, we grew to be really great friends after that. That would have been probably around late 2009. And from 2009 until 2013, we became really close friends. And it led to my being chosen personally by AR to be part of a 6-member team who were all Nephilim hybrids. And our mission was to contact through telepathy and remote viewing methods the incoming planet to ask for their help in a better outcome for humanity, because they said truly the end of 2012 was a doomsday event for mankind. They said every time Nibiru comes through our solar system, it's not catastrophic. It's every 3,600 years. And if it was, Earth changes every 3,600 years, that would be in our geographical record, and it's not. They said the difference is if it comes through and the planet is between Mars and Jupiter, we got a fighting chance that we'll have a buffer. But if it comes through and it's between Mars and Earth, then it's not good for us. We have nothing to buffer its effects. And simultaneously, I'm sure you've heard some people talk about they called it a galactic superwave, this huge plume of energy that was emitted from our galaxy's huge black hole in the middle. It was slated to be the first wave arriving in December of 2012 as well. And so what had happened was we learned to meet each other, the team, on a non-physical platform, and to be able to recognize each other's energetic signatures. And once that was established and we got what they called a handshake, then the next step was to contact the Anunnaki on the incoming planet, and they would confirm that we got a handshake there. Then pretty much we asked for help for mankind because of these doom and gloom predictions. And what had happened was they helped us, and tremendously. But what happened was this pissed off a whole group of people who have become known as the transhumanists, the people who believe that human future evolution is the merge with technology. And these are the people behind the Georgia Guidestones who believe in a depopulation agenda. Keep humanity under 500 million, I believe was their quote. Well, that didn't fly well with us on the other side of that. It's like, who are they to decide who lives and who dies? But make a long story short, the mission was successful. And we can get into how that was done, because it's not what we gave them our best suggestion, and what they did was well above that. But that's what caused AR's, from everything that I know, the last time I talked to him, he said, our mission was successful. And by the way, the same team was tasked with, if you remember the hurricane, it was Hurricane Sandy. That was coming in towards New York at that time period in 2012. It was being steered artificially into New York, and they tasked the team on helping lessen the severity of the storms with the help of the Anunnaki as well. And if you remember, there was pretty much no effect when those storms reached land. Well, all this went through a monkey wrench into the plans of these people who wanted a depopulation agenda. And AR said, we've pissed off the wrong people. And he warned me specifically. He said, Michael, don't think that the people you met in New York have forgotten who you are. You're being targeted, and you need to keep your wits and awareness about you. And 3 months later, he had come down with a really strange cancer and had died, which pissed me off. And I had done 6 months of filming for a Spike TV show, and by all means, it was going to be a fantastic show. It's done, actually. It's sitting on a shelf somewhere. The head producer of Spike TV said that he had already went up the company ladder and hadn't edited a TV show in like 5 years. And he said Spike TV was so hot on this that they had him editing 24/7 along with the other editors to get it ready to be broadcast in the fall of 2012. And right after AR told me this, that we'd pissed off the wrong people and I was being targeted, word came from Spike that they had word came down from Viacom that they weren't allowed to air the TV show. So there's a good thing. How about all the listeners contact Spike TV and tell them to air it?
Oh, man.
But simultaneously, Spike TV show was stopped from being broadcast, and I was set, and AR was set to speak publicly for the first time at a conference called the Pythagoras Conference. And the last minute, that was shut down as well. And what had happened was, I was so pissed off with all this that I took all the information that I'd given to Spike TV, and without telling a single soul, I approached Wes Penray, which I don't know if you know who Wes is, but he's probably one of the best writers on the alternative news circuit. He ran the place called the Illuminati News. And I gave him all my information and said, I just want you to get this out there. And he did. And by the way, everything that I'm telling right now, if people want to get more info on it, go to my website. It's michaelleehill.net, and go to my blog section, and you'll see all these. I have all the Wes Penray writings on what happened with the Spike TV show and the Pythagoras Conference, and pretty much everything is there, in detail. But that's pretty much what happened with A.R. Borden. But what I can tell you is the group who was formed, personally selected by A.R. Borden, I've been friends with them all since then. And I thought it'd be a good idea to get someone else to start to reveal some of this story so it's not all coming from me. And so I've arranged it where they've started to go public now, and all of them have done individual radio interviews, and we've done some together where, like, for instance, right when I was brought on board with these people, I started asking, AR about music, and he had a gentleman named Quanta Price on Facebook. He was a member of their group, and he was a musician, a studio musician. So he started guiding me into the subject of 432 hertz as, which really important subject.
It is.
Yeah, and he started me on that path of starting to understand how 432 is important. And the reason I'm saying this is just recently we did our first interview together, and so it was nice for me to be able to go back to him and tell him where, the path he set me on, where it led to. But right along with this, they're telling how they met AR and, getting into the work we did and everything. So it's nice that it's coming out from other people, because it's not just me, and I'm not making this stuff up. These people really do exist. That was funny too, because a lot of people were just saying that I was making A.R. Borden up. And right before he passed away, he did his one and only interview with me. People can find it. Just type in A.R. Borden, Michael Lee Hill on Google, and you'll find this interview. And right at the beginning of the interview, I'm like, a lot of people say you don't exist, but unless I'm the world's best ventriloquist, you really do exist. And I feel that way with these other members of the team that I've been learned so much from, and just I'm proud of the work we did, because it was all for humanity. We went to bat for humanity, and all of this will be revealed in a very near future when the Anunnaki return and set the story straight, especially regarding who the true Nephilim are, because of being brought in with the Native American Indian elders for these Star Knowledge conferences. By the way, the first one I spoke at was last year, and after I got done speaking, this gentleman named Chief Blue Star Eagle came up to me, and he's a very respected Native American Indian chief, and actually is very involved in the White House right now for some things that are going to be revealed about all this, it seems like. And he came up to me and he said, I just want you to know I've met the faceless beings as well. That was huge for me, because he's the first person that had confirmation of meeting these beings,
When was the last time you talked to Marduk? Are you still in communication?
Oh, yeah. As I said, the second human vessel that Marduk came through is a dear friend of mine, and his wife is a dear friend of mine as well. And I'm still, matter of fact, they've invited me. I'm going to be going back probably sometime this week for dinner and another hot tub session. And me and him speak from a whole nother level now. And he's not the only one I'm in contact with now, by the way. I'm sure you've heard of Toth.
Yes, of course.
You know, yeah, he's here physically incarnated as well. And it's interesting because and he's part of the formation of this council, and how it fits in with who the Native American Indians are is, you know, the prophecy of what's called the Rainbow Warriors. And it's all related. And what I can tell you is, and for the listeners as well, go type in Edgar Cayce DNA. They'll bring you to some good information on, you know, Edgar Cayce called them the Poseidons, which Poseidon is Inky, you know, and Neptune. He's known as Ptah in Egypt. Edgar Cayce said that these Poseidons, or the Atlanteans, became the mound builders who became the Iroquois tribe of Indians, intertwined and into the Native American Indian tribes, like the Cherokee are an offset of the Iroquois, you find out. But the reason I'm telling you this is now because of meeting with these Native American Indian chiefs and grandmothers, because you find out it's actually the females who have the highest level of authority within their culture. Like Chief Golden Light Eagle said, "So Michael, you're one of those Iroquois?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Oh, you're one of those Atlanteans. That's heavy duty." Here, I thought I was on the cusp of some cutting edge information. Seems like I'm the last to know.
Right,
But
right.
Well, I got a contact from one of the grandmothers, and she said, "I'm so happy that you're releasing the information on who the mound builders are," because she said it's within 5,000 years of written history and 10,000 years of oral history that the Atlanteans are the mound builders.
Now, when it comes to Toth and the you know, his tablets, the emerald tablets,
yeah,
what do you know about that, and are those real?
I think that they are real, and they resonate very well with me. I've read them from beginning to end, and especially, you know, he says that how some of the ancient Sumerian structures were even made. If you recall, he said that one of the Atlanteans just walked and cities would form behind him. It was just like built right out of the ether. It's LERM. It's what we were talking about before, light encoded reality matrix, and being able to, you know, create physical matter from light. And this gets into a really interesting subject, because I know this sounds like crazy stuff to a lot of people, but, you know, as I was saying, I was contacted by Bigelow Aerospace, the owners of Skinwalker Ranch. And what he had told me is, first of all, the reason that they're even called skinwalkers is that the Native American Indians named them that because they would see these orbs of light come down and take on physical, biological life forms, like a giant wolf,
right,
or a giant deer, or anything really. And do you know who John Alexander is?
Yep.
Yeah, he's the one that set up, you know, for all UFO reports to go to Bigelow. And he just released recently, he said that some of the craziest things that happened at the Skinwalker Ranch was, they called it poltergeist activity, where, like, one example he gave was there's 3 poles with cameras on each pole, and each camera was in view sight of the other camera, and like there's a flash of light, and then the very next second all the cameras are gone,
right,
and all the tape that held the, you know, the cable going up to the camera, not only was it gone, it wasn't like laying on the ground or ripped off, it was just gone, and the cable had been cut and the cameras were gone. And he said that there was a whole herd of cattle around those cameras, and they would get really spooked if anyone even came close to them, and they were totally unaffected. Like, it happened so fast. And they said, well, what conclusion have you come to regarding the intelligence behind the phenomenon at the Skinwalker Ranch? And he said, we've come to the conclusion that we're up against the trickster. Well, there you have it, right? But what I want to tell you is the Bigelow investigator pointed me into the direction of some declassified documents from the UK Ministry of Defense. And in these papers, it said that the real deal were these orbs of light, and they didn't know how they formed or they would separate and come back together. And it said the really exceptional thing was that 3 of these orbs of light could come together and in some process unknown to us create one physical triangular craft that was hundreds of feet long on each side that's been reported all over the world. And so what I want to bring to the table is, this isn't my opinion. This is Bigelow Aerospace, one of the leading people in this technology, and the UK Ministry of Defense. They're saying these orbs of light can become anything physical, both biological and technological. It can become a giant wolf, or they can become a giant triangular craft. That's a whole new ball game, you know. And even at the Skinwalker Ranch, they said that this intelligence would kind of just mess with them, letting them know that it was there. And they said that, you know, it was staffed with all these scientists, and the scientists would have to bring in groceries that are living there. They would unpack all their groceries into the refrigerator and, you know, walk into the next room, think, oh, you know what, I'm going to get me a drink, go back into the kitchen, and everything was back in the grocery bags that they just unpacked. And, you know, event after event like this. And by the way, I've had some really crazy multi-dimensional communication from the Anunnaki along those lines, where they pretty much proved to me that they could communicate through my own personal reality, which took some getting used to.
Before, we're going to be up against our last break, and we've got too much more stuff to talk about, so we'll go into a little bit of overtime, if you don't mind.
Oh, it's all good.
But this recent discovery by Kepler, KIC, the alien megastructure out around the star, is been in the headlines. Do you know anything about what they have seen, and has anybody communicated to you as to what they are looking at out at the star?
No, actually, if I'm not mistaken, that news just came through a couple days ago, right?
Yes.
And that's when I was up on the mountain. You know, I had no access to anything, so I might have to look into this myself.
Yeah,
but it doesn't shock me.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. It's out near Cygnus, and well, you know, it's just the deviation of light and the diffraction that is changing there. Normally, Kepler sees a 1% deviation when a planet is in orbit around a specific star, and you can imagine, you know, a small planet going in front of a star in its orbit, then it's going to dim just a little bit, but they have a way to measure that. Well, they've got this star now that is got a 20%, 22% diffraction rate, and it's freaking everybody out. It's some kind of, well, there's all kinds of speculation out there, but a lot of astronomers are saying artificial, you know, and alien megastructure is the words that have been, you know, thrown about lately. And it's pretty
awesome.
Interesting. Yeah, you should see what you can find out about that. Let's take our break. And also, when we come back, I'll tell you what I read, by the way, about Boyd Bushman. And I don't want to let that subject get away from us. And we've got everything else still on the table. This is Fade to Black tonight. Michael Lee Hill is with us. More with Michael when we come back right after this short break. Stay right there.
To my boy, Jimmy Church, on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Despite popular opinion, Reading a book will not make you smarter.
But listening to Jimmy Church will.
All right, you Fadernauts. Studio Dome has done it once again. A new Studio Dome Fadernaut special. Introducing the Studio Dome Boom Box Bluetooth speaker. It's got a rear-firing bass film subwoofer and dual 52mm main speakers. You'll never listen to your tablet or cell phone speakers again. Just click on the Studio Dome banner, use the promo code Jimmy, and you'll get the SBB for $49 and free shipping. And get a Buddy 4-port USB charger for free. That's a $19.99 value right there. And they'll throw in a Buddy in the box. It's the best deal on the net anywhere. Just go to jimmychurchradio.com, click on the Studio Dome banner, enter the promo code Jimmy. Go Beckley Teppy.
Erica, Brittany, Gabby, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
It's not a lifestyle we chose. We were born this way. KGRARadio.com.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Welcome back, Fade to Black. Great start to a great week. Tonight, musician, guitar player, Anunnaki, Michael Lee Hill, right here. Tomorrow night, Paul Eno. Wednesday night, The Haunted Housewives. Thursday night, special Halloween show with Shah, the Loon Witch. Michael, I wanted to tell you what. Look, when it comes to Boyd Bushman, when his deathbed confessional came up and he had the boards and he's showing evidence of this and that, I was taken aback. I was like, man, I'm really bummed out about this. I'd heard about Boyd for years, and it didn't sit right with me. It just didn't. The Walmart thing came out, and even that felt a little bit funny. You alluded to disinfo a little bit ago. We'll visit that again in a second. But in the last couple of days, a friend of mine sent me a bunch of Freedom of Information Act documents that he had released to him on Boyd Bushman and the entire FBI dossier on him. I think it was 74 or 78 pages, of which I read every one. And this was what blew my mind about Boyd Bushman when I had doubts about what was, going on and the things that he had to say and his evidence that he had brought forward. And I go through and I read these FBI documents, and they were all about Lockheed's concern with him because he was working with, and to check this, now this is official documents, he was working on anti-gravity for Lockheed. And he was frustrated on funding. He was, he had some issues, but he was in contact with a couple of scientists that were over in Europe. And they were on his trail, and they were like tapping his phones, listening to his conversations, reading his mail. They were fully on to. They were afraid that he was going to disclose these anti-gravity secrets. And you read this, and I'm serious, man. It is straight out of the craziest science fiction James Bond spy movie stuff that you could ever imagine. And it just goes back and makes you wonder and scratch your head. They were using words like, he's a brilliant scientist, and he means, he means a lot to Lockheed. And just when I had really written Boyd Bushman off, I go back and I read these. Now, I don't know about the other ET stuff, but certainly the guy had a very sound foundation at Lockheed, and he was really into some esoteric research when it comes to anti-gravity. I'll say this, and then I want you to answer. It seems like Lockheed has a program. They have been successful in this anti-gravity propulsion system, and it is in these documents. And Boyd Bushman was the cat at the center of it.
Indeed. And that's exactly in our film From Here to Andromeda. And people can check this out. Go to YouTube and go to UFO TV Boyd Bushman, and they'll find the interview that we did with Boyd for our documentary, me and David Sarita, From Here to Andromeda. And remember, this is what happened, why the first meeting with the Anunnaki was over this information. What he had revealed, he just spilled the beans. He showed us working anti-gravity, let us film it. He showed us the first reverse engineered craft that flew in 1959 that was built by Con Air, I believe. We have the blueprint of that in the film. But what he showed us was, he said, imagine if you took two super magnets, and you got one in each hand, right? And if they're in one direction, they're going to come together and stick together. But if you put it in the repelling direction, then they're going to repel away from one another. And they drilled a hole through these magnets and forced them together and bolted them together. And he said that it caused a disturbance in the magnetic field around this magnetic disturbance. He said you could actually measure it. It was like 6-foot sphere that it was disrupting the gravity. And then what they did was they took that magnetic anomaly they had created by forcing two supermagnets together in opposing direction, and they put it inside of a sphere. And they said, with Galileo, and, they went up to the top of the Leaning Tower of Pisa, and all our physics are based on those two, like a rock and a feather hit at the same time. Well, what Boyd said was they made one sphere that had no magnetic anomaly in it. It was just weighted, so it was exactly the same weight as this other sphere that had the magnetic anomaly. Every time they dropped those two spheres, the one with the magnetic anomaly ended up hitting the ground a few milliseconds after the one that didn't have a magnetic anomaly. Then he went on to show us, picture two huge magnets that were, like when these two magnets were brought together, they were the size of like a Volkswagen, and it had a nuclear engine thing that was like accelerating the effect of whatever was happening. And what they would do at the beginning is take this assembly and lower it down into the belly of a jet. And you can imagine if you could even take away half of its gravity, then you could go twice as far with the same amount of fuel.
Right.
But it's interesting, too, because I do want to point out that's exactly what they were pissed off about. They said, this, how did this information get out? And, it wasn't on the list. And it was, and they said, and specifically, when people go and watch that interview, Boyd said that he knew a doctor that actually treated the pilot for the Roswell event. And he said that pretty much at that point they had a working Tesla ray gun, that Tesla was working on this. I think he called it the death ray, right? It's
right.
Particle beam weapons now that they've turned it into. But they had a working prototype back then, and he said that a pilot, this is Boyd Bushman telling the story of his friend that was a doctor who, his patient was this Air Force pilot who shot down the craft. And the Anunnaki with Marduk meeting at the beginning, they said specifically they were upset with what he had revealed regarding the Roswell event and the anti-gravity. So you're absolutely right, because they were pissed. But, this is an interesting thing. Isn't it interesting that they didn't know who I am until I let them check my third eye? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I think that's interesting because everyone must go under the veil when they come here. It doesn't matter who you are, because, between me and your listeners, I can tell you now, there's a reason Toth is talking to me and Marduk. It's because I am Inky's human messenger, or Inky here in these human clothes, if you want to put it that way. It's funny, Toth even said to me, and by the way, this individual has been confirmed to me by A.R. Borden's group that he is the real deal and is who he says he is. So we've been talking on Skype, and he goes, "Isn't it kind of strange that you're my father in another realm?" I said, "Yeah, I guess that is kind of weird, you know."
Yeah, that's pretty trippy. Hey, let me before we run out of time, let me get a couple of specifics in. Have you spoken to David Wilcock about any of this?
You know, me and David know each other from the past, and I've not spoken to him recently, and you know what? He's one of the ones I would love to talk to because I hear him speaking so negatively regarding the Nephilim. And, you know, anyone that starts talking negatively about the Nephilim and stating that they're the ones behind the world's secret societies and Skull and Bones and all of this, I can tell you they're not haplogroup X. The only place haplogroup X is on this planet is through the mound builders. And like I said, now a lot of evidence is coming out through Edgar Cayce and the actual Native American Indians. And I can tell you in these actual earth mounds, what I've discovered, and I'm going to be revealing this at the next Star Knowledge Conference, is that they are encoding information on the most cosmic harmonious frequencies, being 432, and all the octaves of 432. Like in frequency, anywhere you're at, if you're at 432, you know, say you got a piano and you got an A note tuned to 432. Well, there's a whole, to your left, there's another lower A note and then another lower A note. Those are called octaves. And to get to any frequency, the lower octave, you just divide by 2. So the next one's 216 hertz. The next one's 108 hertz because 108 and 108 is 216. 216 and 216 is 432. What I can tell you is these numbers are encoded into the actual layout of these mound sites. Some of the walls will be 2,160 feet long, you know, 216. Another one will be 1,080 feet long. With,
really?
You know,
really?
108. Yeah, no one knows this yet. I think it's really fascinating. Yeah, I've made a presentation on my michaellehill.net. People can find it, and I actually have all the mound sites with their surveyor's maps and all the dimensions and how they relate to these most cosmic harmonious frequencies.
Now I'm going to get into a couple of questions here that are in Twitter. I'm going to start at the top with Stargazer. She says, does Michael trace his ability to communicate back to reading Seth Speaks?
I attribute everything I ever learned spiritually to Seth. It wasn't the Wingmakers. It wasn't AR. I mean, I respect all these people, but I want to say it was the Seth material that, you know, I remember reading this stuff, and it made me think so hard it felt like someone punched me in the temple. You know, it was such a paradigm shift for me.
Sure.
So, yes, I would say absolutely that the Seth material is what started me on this journey.
And this is from Nancy. She says, how does Christ play into all of this?
Well, I can tell you, I got the opportunity to speak with Nicholas Haywood, who is the spokesman for the Priory of Sion, which is, you know, the whole Da Vinci Code.
Yes.
You know, and I got to ask him, I said, you know, listen, is this Jesus and Mary Magdalene's bloodline? Is it the Nephilim? And he confirmed that was true. But in the Bible, they call the Anunnaki the Elohim. And I just wanted to confirm for myself my understanding. So I asked him, does that bloodline go back all the way to the Anunnaki? And he confirmed that as well. So what I can tell you is Jesus, in my opinion, was a member of the Nephilim bloodline, and that's confirmed by the spokesman of the Priory of Sion.
Okay. Let's see. I'm just going down the list here. This is from Allison. So why are they slowing disclosure?
From what I understand, first of all, they said timing is everything. And if you think about, most of your listeners are going to be hip enough to know that 911 was a inside job. But imagine right after that happened, Bush had a 98% approval rating. Everyone bought it, hook, line, and sinker, whatever they were told to believe. I hate to say that, but that is the truth of the matter. Imagine if they came down right then and there and said, listen, you're being lied to. And not only that, these people have been doing this horrendous things, keeping mankind in this survival, oil-based economic slavery system. And now put on top of that, if our government would have spun it in a negative fashion that we're being invaded, well, it just couldn't happen then. And that wasn't that long ago. It's like people needed to become aware of the treachery and the dishonest behavior of our so-called leaders, so people would even begin to understand why there was giant changes to the system needed. And I can tell you, I was pulled into because of AR, I was pulled into a meeting with the elite, and they said, we want to talk to you about why your Spike TV show was not allowed to air, and that this subject has been kept from humanity for the last 25 years. And I actually think this is a really fascinating topic of discussion. Pretty much they said they just didn't trust humanity with this technology. They said free energy sounds all great. By the way, I got to interject that this is what they told me. I'm not saying I subscribe to this point of view, but they said once free energy is revealed on a planet, and they said that the extraterrestrial subject, the next question, if that becomes real, well, people will say, well, how'd they get from there to here? That leads to their propulsion systems. That leads to free energy. They said it truly is unlimited free energy, and it's Pandora's box. When it's released, every single person on this planet will have access to unlimited free energy. They said, what do you think of these people in the Middle East that are killing each other, their brothers and sisters, just because they believe something different? What do you think that they're going to do with their unlimited free energy? What do you think ISIS would do with their unlimited free energy? Probably nothing good, right? Interesting. Wow, that's interesting. That's real interesting. I never thought of that even before. So I said, well, listen, we're all in agreement that there is higher intelligence here, higher extraterrestrial cultures who I think that every single culture would have had to gone through this phase of evolution, that unless they grew spiritually along with their technology, if they grew technology and not spiritually, they're going to get to a point where they self-implode. And I said, why don't we talk to some of these races who maybe got through this phase in their own evolution, I don't know, maybe 1 million years ago, and learned the futility of war in these thought forms. Let's talk to them about what systems they've learned that works. And what I can tell you is I think that we're going to see our economic system crumble. And when it does, I want people to rejoice, because there's something way better waiting in the wings, and that is for mankind to become a true galactic society and have access to galactic culture and all the systems of our world that are not for the whole, they're just for a few people, oil and banking families' wallets. Those systems have to go. They're not conductive to evolution. So these systems have to go. And don't think for a second, Saint Germain is still here, and he's an economic genius. Right. It's going to be a beautiful time for mankind. We're entering the next golden age, but it might look pretty chaotic on the outside of things.
Let's see. Jimmy, please ask Michael whether there is a language or message encoded into genuine crop circles.
Yes. Check this out. First of all, when they told me my connection to Inky, which was, in 2008, I asked them, I said, listen, if you are who you say you are, encode the name Inky, because they told me my connection to Inky back then. I said, put Inky into a crop circle. And I'm a student of that subject. I will see it. I will know. That will be my confirmation. My next thought was, what a silly request.
I would have gone there. I would have gone there. That was actually pretty smart.
Well, I thought if a big crop circle showed up and Inky was written in cursive in it, it wouldn't be,
right.
But then I thought, well, if you are who you are, you'll figure it out. And then my next thought was, well, while we're at it, then why not shoot for the stars, encoded in something as well that only I would be able to decode. And I left it at that. Well, in 2011, it happened for real. People can check out 2011 in Italy, a crop circle showed up, and in binary code written around the 7-pointed star was written the name Ea space Inky. But where this gets really cool was because of my work in the cymatics, which is the science of making the invisible visible, of making frequency visible. I had went and tracked down the proper cymatic image for every note within the musical scale tuned properly. And I make these crystal discs that people can check out on my website under the shop section. And what I can tell you is I had made one disc for every note of the musical scale, so I could just hold it in my hand and look at it. And this one disc was made from a 27 hertz cymatic image. Well, 27 hertz is totally 432 related, because as we're saying, every frequency to get to its higher octave, you just double it. So 27 and 27 is 54. 54 and 54 is 108. 108 and 108 is 216. 216 and 216 is 432. You will never have a 27 hertz frequency unless you're tuned properly 4 octaves above it to 432.
Right.
What I can tell you is that 27 hertz frequency makes a perfect 7-pointed star. And I'm holding the cymatic image going, why does this look so familiar to me? And then it hit me. That's what's inside of the Inky crop circle. So they did encode it with only something I would be able to decode. But what I found out then is even more fascinating is that 7-pointed star is the Babylonian world map that's sitting in a museum right now.
Yes, it is. It is. I saw that right off.
And the Cherokee, the Native American Indian symbol of the Cherokee is a 7-pointed star.
So the crop circle that you have on your homepage, that's the 7-pointed star that says Inky in Italy?
Yes, indeed. And people, if you want to get into a lot more detail on that, please, again, visit my website, michaelleehill.net. Go to the blog section. One of the first, the most recent ones you'll see is the Anunnaki are communicating most cosmic harmonious frequencies through crop circles. And all of this information that we're talking about, you can see the cymatic images for yourself. But, Jimmy, I want to share something really cool with you, because the company that I hired to actually make a cymatic image of my guitar tuned to 432 is called Cymoscope, and they're a leader in this technology of doing this. Well, I made sure my guitar, I was meticulous about it, making sure it was tuned to 432. And I got my image back, and they said, we've never seen anything like this. They said that we've imaged everything known to man, from dolphin noises. They're kind of becoming famous for making a dolphin language.
Yes,
you know?
I've seen it, yes.
Yeah, and but what I can tell you is they asked me for my permission to release the full 20-second sound clip of me just hitting my A note, but they said that they never imaged an electric rock guitar, and they've never seen the kind of complexity or dimensionality that was created, and they said they think it's probably from the tubes, because you know how like a good guitar amp is tube driven, right?
Right.
And what it's doing to the signal. But they've released that video about a month ago. So if they go to cymoscope.com, go to videos, and under there you'll find it says Michael Lee Hill 432. But it's 432 is such an important thing to get into, and I don't know how much time we got left.
We've got like 3 minutes, and I wanted to do a full hour on 432.
I would love it.
Yeah, I know, and we got to get you back, but hold on for a second. I saw 432 versus 440, right? I'm looking at the two of them.
Yeah.
And I was shocked. I didn't think I would see what I saw. You have to go and look, audience, go and look. We don't have the time to get into that right now. But how does the audience, because now I know that you tuned to 432. I wanted to ask you about, does Vi tune to 432?
I don't think anyone's tuning to 432 right now except Prince.
Okay. Well,
Prince is.
How does the audience react to 432? Can you tell?
Well, what I can tell you is think of E equals MC squared, right? All scientists now know that all physical matter is both particle and wave simultaneously. Well, E equals MC squared is only the mass part of the equation. There's no frequency component. But if you take 432 squared is the speed of light. It's the only frequency that truly is a component of light, and everything is made from light. And take, for instance, that mainstream scientists just released that they now know that cells communicate. They thought it was through electricity, but now they say, no, it's sound. So imagine once you find out what frequencies cells are communicating with, it'll be the end of disease as we know it. And they're all going to be 432 based because it's the only frequency that is it is C in the E equals MC squared equation, and that works back to energy. You know?
Interesting. How did 432 come to you?
The first time I heard about it was because of, being brought into A.R. Borden's group and meeting Quanta Price. His name's Clay Price, but, that's the first time I ever heard of 432. And what I can tell you is the easiest way to even start to comprehend this is if you have an acoustic guitar and you tune from 440 down 8 cents to 432, you'll gain about 1/3 decibel level by nothing other than that. As you've seen in that picture of 440 versus 432, there's no geometry in the 440.
Right.
If there's more information in the signal, I'll tell you, when I tuned my guitar down to 432, all of a sudden I heard all these overtones that they're not there in 440. They're just not. And I was actually wondering if the microphone would pick up what I was hearing, because it sounded like a symphony was playing along with me, And that's one thing Clay told me real long ago. He goes, I don't even know how you guys can keep your guitars in tune at 440 because the overtones don't really come through like they should.
Yeah, when you look at the pictures, the difference between 440 and 432, 440 is a mess. And it's also the standard. So if it's the standard and our standard is a mess, right?
Yeah. It was done on purpose too. It was only like the 1940s, and it was a Nazi scientist. They knew what they're doing. It's our brains. If we're part of nature, right? And if nature is being formed from 432, our brains are wanting to receive information at 432. At 440 is probably. But isn't it interesting how many musicians who have created timeless music went to that half-step down tuning?
That's right. Eddie Van Halen,
Indeed. Yeah. It probably wasn't as perfect as 432, but I can guarantee you it was a hell of a lot better than 440.
And it sounded pretty damn cool, too.
Hell yeah. It has that deeper thump to it,
And your guitar would just vibrate just a little bit differently, And yeah, you're absolutely right. Michael, we're out of time, my brother.
Man, it's been so fun talking to you. This has been one of my favorite interviews ever. So thank you for having me.
No, thank you. We've just got to get you back on. We've got all the other stuff that we've got to talk about. Unfortunately, I got to roll credits, my brother. You have
peace.
Great safe night, everybody. Michael Lee Hill. His website is michaelleehill.net. You can get there through jimmychurchradio.com, michaelleehill.net. Thank you, Michael. You have a great, safe rest of your evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Michael Lee Hill, amazing conversation. Thank you so much. We ran up right against it. I wanted to keep going. I was watching Twitter. Don't think I didn't see the overtime overtures there. I did. This is Fade to Black. Thank you, Michael Lee Hill. Absolutely amazing. One of the best. michaelleehill.net. Fade to Black's executive producer is Rita Kamarian. Show is produced by Hilton J. Paul, Mark D. Kovar, LJ3, Renee, Mark Dunbar, and Jonas. Announcers are Steve Harder, Gene Vitola, Mark D. Kovar. Fady by Dale. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music, Doug Aldrich. Intro is Spaceboy, spaceboymusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network. Syndication is KGRA The Planet. Woo! Tomorrow night, Paul Eno.